Hello, team and other teams. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics and Prof. Gerdes and Greg Terry Experience co-stream. It's the three amigos together to discuss what the crazy, I was going to say some religious blasphemy there, but what the heck is going on, guys? It is a insanity, I think, geopolitically speaking, and I'm sure we're going to talk about lots of that, and also some little nuggets of information coming out concerning trucks driving into Dnipropetrovsk and this happening here and that happening there. It's all going to happen on this live stream. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this. I hope you are both well.
If you curse in British, we won't necessarily know.
You'll be won over by my winning accent.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just go, oh, that sounds interesting.
Well, I have been known to drop a few colorful metaphors in Ukrainian or Russian, and inside my heart, I feel good about that because it's not my native language.
It's okay then. It's okay.
Yes. The Lord forgives me.
So I guess one of the biggest topics of conversation that we're going to cover today, especially since we probably have somewhat differing views, maybe, I don't know, will concern the telephone call between Putin and Trump that, in my eyes, cements Trump as being thoroughly uninterested in doing anything to support Ukraine in any conceivable way. I've given up any hope that I had, and what hope I had was microscopic as was. Now we are at a point where I think it is fairly safe to say that, absent of some fundamental shift, he's not going to do anything to support Ukraine. I don't know. Do both of you agree with that?
Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I just think we're beginning to see the true colors exposed right now. And I would call your guys' attention to, if you're here watching on my channel or Johnny's channel, go check out Prof's video from last night about Donald Trump. He gives some clarity in some viewpoint adjustments. The bottom line is we've seen this coming, but just the last 48 hours have cemented it. Not only with the phone call, which was an absolute tragedy when you really look at the transcript of it. In addition to that, statements that are made after by members of his cabinet, including the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. You put that into the mix. And then on top of that, today, during the press conference with the president of South Africa speaking, throwing out, well, Russia should be in the G8. Why'd they get kicked out? The bottom line is he is enamored by the authoritarian dictator, Vladimir Putin. It's not going to change. He will not be persuaded. And as the American administration is saying, we can't solve every problem in the world. They're going other places. He's out. He's out.
Yeah. So I had two assumptions that guided my thinking about Trump. The first was that, well, everybody can acknowledge he's a narcissist, and that he would have to, be the biggest something in the room and that sort of thing. But with Putin, he just doesn't, he just rolls over and is okay with Putin. It just doesn't make any sense. So that was the first one that's been confounded. The second one is, I think, still there, but he's only shown one side of it. He can zig or zag because he doesn't have an ideological core, but he's only zagged. Yeah, or only zigged. He's never zagged really back toward Ukraine. He's only gone one direction. So it seems to me that his relationship, and what Greg was just alluding to, I put out a video last night, hey, I got it wrong about Trump. He's got this. He wants to be liked or have a relationship or something with Putin to the point where he just can't bring himself to do anything. And I think what he's going to do is continue down this kind of path, and he might allow the Senate or, the Congress to do something, or the European, the big leaders there between Starmer and Macron and Merz and others to do something, but he's not going to do anything himself. And maybe it's because of looking toward the later deals on the other side that maybe we can, he can preserve that relationship while others, but he's not doing anything. He just keeps showing. You can only say, oh, I'm going to do something so long before the threat rings hollow, right? We were all kids. Your parents were tired and said, don't make me come up. Well, you pushed until a point and something happened. It's not happening. So
I always try and armchair psychologize because I'm a qualified psychologist, right? I'm not, just in case anyone wonders.
You are a tippling philosopher.
and a
Yes.
legend.
So, well, I'm glad you seen this. I am going to tipple as well. I've got a nice bottle of Pinot Noir that I'm just going to crack into because it's that time of night.
And this is
why
why
not?
you guys should be listening to Professor Gertis or myself, in addition to Johnny, because he may be tippling, but I will be sipping from zero sugar sweet tea.
Literal teetotaler.
And we'll see who makes more sense after their drink. So, as I like to armchair psychologize, the question is, to Prof's point, which is why is he so enamored to strongmen? Well, okay, and then why does he act in one way to them and another way to other people? So what appears to be going on consistently throughout his life is that any democratically elected leader, he doesn't give any time to. Any female leader, he doesn't really give any time to. Any leader that's particularly younger than him as well, people more knowledgeable on these things than myself have noted that age is quite a big thing for him. So when you look at Putin, when you look at Xi Jinping, and when you look at Viktor Orban, they're all of a sort of, aged enough to be people that he can give respect to. These are all people he aspires to be. People like Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer and Friedrich Merz and Volodymyr Zelensky. It doesn't appeal to him to be democratically elected. He wants to be a strongman. What he said about Kim Jong-un, where he says, I want my people to sit up straight like they do for him, tells you all you need to know, I think, about Trump. So I think he is insecure enough to still need validation, right? This is my psychologizing, that he needs that validation, which is why he's always fawning after people who speak well of him. And he really, really does love to be adulated, right? And he hates difficult questions. Today, in that Cyril Ramaphosa White House meeting, the South African leader, he went off on the journalist who gave him a difficult question. He can't handle difficult questions. He needs to be given fawning appreciation all the time. And I think he will just roll over for those strong men because those are the people he wants to be. And that gives him, it's all this kind of weird validation where he sees people as weaker than him. Democratically elected leaders are just by default weaker. And he craps on them, but then fawns over the people that he wants to be. And I think that's a dynamic.
Yeah, he has an interesting mentality. He seems to see the world in terms of two classes, but they're not economic. They're like, there's the kings and the killers over here, and then there's everyone else that are the sheep, right? I mean, that's and it's interesting that that's the way he sees the world, because most Americans don't think like that. Most Americans we love an underdog that can fight back and win. As I understand, the Brits, they like dead heroes.
We're famous for liking underdogs, actually. So it's a big thing in British mentality is the underdog.
Yeah, dead British or dead underdogs though. Those seem to be lionized from what I can detect. That's just my perception. But okay, I like the charge of the light brigade kind of something like. That's not a good idea, guys. But okay. But he doesn't seem to think that way at all. He seems to think exactly the opposite. He wants to be with the killers on the other. So it's just odd. And I don't claim any deep psychological understanding here, but he just doesn't seem to want to depart from this path that he's on, and everything is just bending to that.
Let me throw this in here because I was just watching the press conference with the South African president, and the reporters were actually trying to get a response from the president of South Africa. And this is when a couple of the jokes were dropped. What in the hell is Zelensky doing in South Africa? Trump joking and laughing, and the president of South Africa said, well, he's there trying to make peace. And then this is where the G7, G8 comment comes out. Russia needs to be in, Trump making those statements. And that can be looked at separately. But when you can go watch this, guys, anywhere. When the president of South Africa was trying to speak, Trump would not even let him answer. And the reporters were screaming at him literally screaming at him, let him answer, let him answer, let him answer. And Trump is going, quiet, quiet, quiet. I'm not making this up. Just go look it up. It's what just happened. So if you think about that, you think about his, as you guys were just talking about, his viewpoint, how he views the global stage, these world leaders, dictators, authoritarian figures. And then you put on top of that, let's go back to his cabinet meeting, everybody around the table, and it was just, you know, spread out there. Everybody sits around and they praise Trump. You've done this great. You've done this great. So we see the clues there. Okay. But the reality is, can a zebra change his stripes? No.
Oh, he's just paraphrasing a biblical verse there, Johnny. You watch out.
But a snake can shed his skin. And I am fully convinced now, 100%. I was already, but now even more. After the call, it's over. It's absolutely over. Donald Trump is moving on to greener pastures. And to answer your guys, maybe everybody's question in a nutshell, why would he do that? Because he ran into the boss. And the boss was sitting at the school having a little conversation with him, walked out, stopped by the men's room, and within 3 minutes of hanging up was in front of the cameras going, this is what unfolded. And that's it. He's out of his league completely. And he's just going to move on. That's what bullies do. If you can't be the bully in charge, you go somewhere else to bully. So that's my personal viewpoint. He's done with Ukraine. He hates Vladimir Zelensky with a passion. I don't care what he says. He hates him.
Agreed.
He hates that man.
There's some really interesting analysis, Greg, about his form. So when you say, I find it interesting you say he's going to walk away, because actually when you look at his previous trade deals, what he did with Iran, what he did with Afghanistan in Trump 1.0 is that he did these rush deals and then walked away. So Afghanistan was the Doha agreement, walked away from that, let Biden take the rap for it, and then said, oh, look, this is, and that's kind of what he's doing here, which is do the deal over the head. So in the Doha agreement, he went over the head of the Afghanistani president's head. He went over his head and dealt directly with the Taliban. With Ukraine, he's going over Zelensky's head and not talking with Ukraine, but about Ukraine and without Ukraine, going over their head to talk to the Russians. That's what they did he did in Afghanistan. That's what he's doing here. And then he'll walk away and just, you know, leave it up to someone else to pick up the pieces. So I think he's got a lot of form for doing that. And
I want to agree with you, and then we'll see what Prof thinks here. But this is what is happening even around him today. Marco Rubio being questioned, or last night or today, and the senator was calling Marco Rubio on the floor, not about calling Putin a war criminal. That was one point. But the other point was, he goes, are you aware that Hegseth stopped aid and you don't even know about it? So it's like they like to interrupt each other. You create that atmosphere when that's your modus operandi. Now, it's additionally, when you start talking about Iran, Johnny, you're going right in my wheelhouse now, because I've been hammering this. I believe it. I hate to use the word I, and it's really bad, but for years, I've been trying to communicate that there is a deep connection between Russia, Iran, Syria, North Korea, and China. I will never back down from that. And what's really interesting is just days ago, Trump is shaking hands with the new president of Syria. We all know his background. Unbelievable I don't care. Well, you know, he's a young guy, strong guy. Let's have a new beginning. Okay, I understand that. You know, I believe in forgiveness and new beginnings and all this. But okay, hello, you got to draw your line somewhere. You're the president of the United States. And then Marco Rubio last night testifying that, you know, Syria is probably going to fall in 4 to 6 weeks. And the FBI didn't do a good background check on that guy. But sometimes you just got to let things go. Well, today on Iranian State TV, and I've got the video translated into English, I just haven't put it out yet. Iran is touting their agreement with Russia. saying we are in full agreement with Russia. It's not military, but it's economic. It's full political support. So when America is backing down from Russia, we also see that they will back down from us. So it's out there today. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to, but they're all connected, especially when you bring Iran and Russia into the same sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the time. I'll take the time to. Sorry, I've just got something going on the other screen over there. To show you guys this. So this is a reference to Marco Rubio you were making. Oh, it's gone again. I don't know why that has disappeared.
Well, no, it's there. You just need to turn the lights on.
Here we go. Let's get Marco Rubio in the house.
The person we're negotiating with, Vladimir Putin, is he a war criminal?
Well, I think you can look at instances that have happened there and certainly characterize them as war crimes, but our intent is to end the war.
Is he a war criminal?
We can't end the war without talking to Mr. Putin.
That's pretty simple. Is he a war criminal?
Well, that's
this man we're negotiating with, Vladimir Putin. Is he a war criminal? That's not tough.
But what? I'm trying to answer your question by telling you that we're trying to end the war here.
Go ahead.
No, it's not a simple answer.
You are equivocating, sir. Just answer the question.
I'm answering your question, and the answer is that war crimes have been committed, no doubt. And who's responsible for that? There will be time and place for that accountability. But right now, the job is to end the war.
So you won't answer the question. If we don't end the war,
people are going to get
reclaiming my time, sir. Let me go on.
I mean, that's terrible. He says I'm trying to answer the question by not answering the question. It is an absolute embarrassment. But I mean, it's a politician's answer, but realistically, he doesn't have the gut to call it a war crime. And then I just want to also.
But hold on, Johnny. Before you click. Okay, Prof. What is your thoughts on the Rubio?
It's more than that. So,
okay,
as a Secretary of State, he has to be pushing the policy of the United States. He can't be pushing his own perspective. And if you look at what Bridget Brink has just been saying, she got out of office and then went wild on the things that she was saying, where she was restrained when she was the ambassador to Ukraine. So Rubio is tied up in knots here. I know in his heart of hearts he's anti-communist. I think he's pretty anti-authoritarian as well, but he can't say that. So he's made this pact with the devil to, I can be in the administration and maybe have some impact here. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I don't know, but he certainly can't cross Trump's policy here because he'll be out. So that's where Rubio is, and it was painful to watch that. I know that he knows better. So there's being on the outs, like Nikki Haley, and she can say anything she wants, or there's being on the inside, and then he's really, really restricted. And I hope behind the scenes he's making some better cases.
But so here's the problem. I mean, he could have thought creatively around that. So he should have thought creatively around that, which is the ICC have labeled him a war criminal. Like, he literally has an arrest warrant on his head. So he can play the ICC card and kind of defer to them, rather than say, I believe, or Trump believes, or this government believes, right? So that's one thing he could do. But also, when you take this into account
JP.
Yep.
The United States is not a supporting member of the ICC.
I do know that, but he can,
and we're not defending Rubio. We're not defending Rubio.
I'm just explaining.
I absolutely know. So I know what the problem is people don't have the freedom to speak their minds in government. They can't follow their consciences. And that is a sign of a dictatorship. So on the one hand, you can say, yep, he can't differ from the party line. And I get that. But when you are starting to see that, here's another example. This then starts getting problematic for the American government at the moment. So the US objects to supporting Ukraine in the G7 statement. The US is opposed to including, quote, further support for Ukraine in the G7 statement. So not only do they not want to give more support as part of the G7 to Ukraine, that is being hashed out by the finance ministers in Canada, Washington is also reluctant to describe Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine as illegal in the text. So they can't even now say that the war is illegal. And I find that utterly disgusting.
It is.
So I understand that Rubio can't differ too much from what the bosses say. But that's because the bosses are unwilling to accept any obviously factual claim about what Russia has done and is doing in Ukraine.
I don't think you'll get any argument that that's terrible. I mean, we're all in agreement that that's wrong. And I mean, there's more to the story with the G7. The G7. Why is Russia not in the G? It should be Russia in the G8. Well, wait a minute. Like Russia's G11, if you're going to actually count, right? I mean, G8. They're not in the G8 because they're being punished for bad behavior. That's why they're not there. And so, to understand Trump's mind, I think you have to just remove the morality. Maybe this is a good thing for you, Johnny, to try to think through. All right. If you just simply remove any moral constrictions, does he make sense? Well, now we can just make it right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I think, where Trump is, and that's not where the rest of us are, because like morality matters. So you can't just oh well, leave them to their fate, let them do what they're going to do over there. That's over there, that's not here. It doesn't matter to us. You can't do that.
And think about this, I've been watching Marco Rubio for 20 years in his career coming out of Florida, and he really has fallen off the bandwagon and I mean, it's unbelievable the change in his rhetoric from even 5 years ago, where he is literally calling down fire and brimstone on Moscow, to what we just saw today. But like Prof says, he reports to the President of the United States, and I see F. Oink with a great question over here. So here's where we're at, guys. We're coming to a critical mass event, I personally think, and I'm not prognosticating, I'm not prophesying. I'm just saying this is it right here. If Rubio won't follow his conscience, he values personal power over morals, autocrat.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it.
Self-interest.
But 24 hours ago, his boss is saying the phone call was so good, we just called each other on a first name basis, Vladimir and Donald. And listen, this thing's just got to get ended. And when it's all over, we're going to make Russia rich. They're going to have all this business. And then 24 hours later, Rubio's basically on the carpet by a senator with the nails being pushed on him to call the one that Trump just basically called his buddy a war criminal. So you're right. You're right. You're at a moral crossroads in Russian or Ukraine, tupik. We're at a dead end, and something's going to break. We're seeing it already. We see, Prof called it perfectly. As soon as the ambassador from Ukraine, Brink, left and she got out of Ukraine, she smashed.
She wrote as well.
She went bonkers. We've seen Nikki Haley stand like a beast against this administration and stand for Ukraine. We're going to see more of it because it can't continue. It looked like to me, honestly, that Marco Rubio was so tore up inside, he was going through an enigmatic process. It looked like he was having an enema.
I think he's looked like that for about 3 months. Like every time you see him in
I think his guts are in a knot, man.
In the Oval Office is
and I'm not defending him because he has to stand for what he said. He didn't call Vladimir Putin a war criminal. Okay, you're a coward, sir. But when you look at the big picture, but for sure, he is. So he's aging by the day.
It's depressing when, as you see here, underpinning the intense feeling of frustration in Ukraine is a fact that appears obvious to almost everyone except Trump, that after 119 days, Putin has not made a single concession that suggests he is truly interested in peace. Like, not a single concession has been made. And then when you start putting that together with what the Russians themselves are saying in the newspapers about Trump, which is, these are quotes from Russian newspapers Steve Rosenberg from the BBC's picked out. Trump's stance couldn't be more advantageous to Moscow. Trump is our ideological partner. Just breathe in the smell of the new world order.
Yeah. So this is what I got wrong. When I was saying, like, I've got it wrong. I thought, no, Trump's ego won't allow anyone to one-up him, but he's allowing Putin to one-up him left and right. Like he really does look terrible in front of the world. Like that the American president's allowing the Russian president to just kind of direct him wherever he goes. And it's like he either can't see it or doesn't want to see it or thinks that nobody cares but he's allowing it. And
you're right. He's so weak. It is incredibly weak. Whereas you would think he would want to be the strongest man in the room, but he seems to have this like desire to capitulate to other strongmen.
This is a live stream. James was in there from Why Ukraine. Prof, if you meant to be streaming, we need to flip it on. Secondly,
I'll record it after or
Okay.
pull it down or something.
Secondly, Tuma with a really good comment here. Trump's defenders are really interesting to watch. They come up with crazy explanations with an awkward look whenever you ask about things. I think that's very accurate. It looks like they're in pain trying to.
Yep.
That's what Marco Rubio looked like to me.
Yeah, I mean, they have to work themselves into a pretzel to try to get
Correct.
to make sense of something. Yeah,
yeah, it is really depressing when you see or you hear that the conversation was so warm, right? That neither could put down the phone at the end. It's like, I love you. No, you put down first. No, you put down first. No, you put down first. And it's just sickening. So, as Bloomberg reported, actually, there's a slightly better one here. This is from the Financial Times article, Why Trump Ditched Ukraine, an explanation from the Financial Times. Trump never once pressured Putin to stop the war against Ukraine. He never even raised the topic of a ceasefire in his conversation with him. I think that's appalling. After his call, Trump essentially abandoned his own promise to stop the war. The 2-hour conversation on May the 19th was so warm that neither Trump nor Putin wanted to hang up first. European allies and the Ukrainian leadership felt that they had simply been given up. Without explanation, without a position, just silence. USA is no longer trying to be a mediator. All diplomatic initiatives have been put on hold. Trump is now washing his hands on the matter and stepping aside. And after the conversation with Putin, Trump publicly told reporters that he had not even mentioned the missile strikes on civilians in Ukraine. So that there's absolutely no attempt to in fact, what's the most depressing, I'll be interested in your views on this, is the volte-face from Trump, where before the election he was saying, look, the way we solve this, and I'm going to solve it in one day, and I'll solve it even in 24 hours before I'm inaugurated. But he said, like, if Russia drag their feet, I'll come down so hard on them with sanctions, and I will give Ukraine all the weapons they need. And if Ukraine drag their feet, I will not give them the weapons, blah, blah, blah. So what's happened is he's punished Ukraine for doing everything he's asked them to do. So Ukraine have not dragged their feet. They've said, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, every time Trump's asked for something. And he's punished them with withdrawing aid. They still hasn't fulfilled the presidential drawdown authority that's left over from the Biden administration. 3.8 billion left in that's been appropriated by Congress. So he's punishing Ukraine, and he's not demanded a single concession from Russia, and has not put any sanctions on them, and is now saying he's probably not going to put sanctions on. So,
well, let me throw this in here, Johnny. I just put a video in queue for you. If you would play that, and I will preface this.
Ukraine doing enough to get this?
Yeah,
go ahead and play it.
Okay.
In your mind, is Ukraine doing enough to get this?
I'd rather tell you in about 2 weeks from now, because I can't say yes or no. Zelensky, he's
2 weeks.
Not the easiest person to deal with, but I think that he wants to stop.
Okay, so of course they're playing it on Solovyov. That's where I like to get my videos from, so people can see what's being played on Russian media as well. Yeah. But if you notice, the question was, we will see in 2 to 4 weeks if Ukraine is doing enough to end the war. So there's no requirement for Russia to do anything. Is Ukraine doing enough? They've done
Greg, after getting off the phone with Vladimir, here's another article I was reading today that was Trump was saying, well, but Russia's winning the war.
Yes.
Yes. So
that's a big deal. I've got it in my notes to discuss with you guys. He fully said that.
So that's a Bloomberg article that I've got that here indeed. So I'll just bring that up if you.
So if he really believes that, why would he support the B team when he can support the A team, who's going to win the war after all? I mean, that's his mentality. And
so this comes from a Bloomberg article, Russian advance in Ukraine is slowing despite Putin's confidence. And then some way down the article, if I remember correctly, it's where is it? Anyway, he's basically saying that that Russia is winning. The figures carry many caveats. Fighting that's been bogged down by Ukraine's frigid winters tend to intensify in the summer months. As with all conflicts, a war could lurch in unexpected directions, spurred on by political decisions far from the battlefield. But at Russia's current rate of advance in Donetsk alone, a region a bit smaller than Belgium, it would take several years to fully occupy it, according to Bloomberg calculations based on deep state data. Extrapolating from that, a purely theoretical exercise, occupying all of Ukraine would take well over a century. But Trump still seems to think that they are winning, and he indicated that in the conversation. So I'll just find the exact quote for that. But you guys say something.
Yeah, I had someone who ran the math for me because I talked about this 2 days ago in my daily brief, and I said, okay, so I mean, they've taken roughly the size of the state of Delaware, and Ukraine's about the size of the state of Texas. That helps most Americans understand, like, that's not a lot, like within the last year. Okay, so how long would it take them to take the geographical borders all the way to the geographical borders of those 4 oblasts, which is like, you know, another 20% of the total? And somebody ran the math for me, and it was like 6 to 7 years at the present rate. Like, so now I understand that there are other variables. I totally get that, but like, it's not right around the corner. But I think in Putin's mind that it is, and I think in Trump's mind it is, because in Putin's mind it is. And both leaders, now this is a phenomenon that I see quite a bit. Like, there's this reality distortion field that happens sometimes with people when they are in great heights of power, right? The phrase was termed for Steve Jobs from Apple, the reality distortion field. Like, he could say stuff that can't actually happen, or that's improbable, or not really possible to do, and he would just be like, oh, well, go make it happen. And like, he could kind of bend the will of people around him to match that reality distortion. I think Trump is in it. I think Putin's in it. Putin's in it for a different reason, but well, maybe not that much of a different reason from Trump as I think about it. Putin's in it because they can't speak truth to power. But increasingly, it seems like Trump has isolationists, MAGA types only, or very few people that are willing to even say anything to power. And I don't think, I would imagine Rubio is not too long for that position if he does speak any truth to power. So yeah, that only exacerbates it.
Here's the
let me say this.
comment. In a subsequent call with European leaders, Trump signaled that he was convinced Russia was winning, repeating a number of the Kremlin's talking points, according to people familiar with this exchange, who declined to comment on talks behind closed doors. And the question is, if he's repeating, you know, why is he saying this? And is it that he's not receiving intelligence briefings from his own intelligence staff? Is it that the American intelligence services are compromised? Or is it that he's just getting most of his information directly from Putin, who's talking to him on the phone for 2 hours saying, by the way, we're winning, Zelensky's under the cosh, Ukraine are in trouble, they're going to be there on the losing side, and he comes off the call and says, oh yeah, by the way, Ukraine are losing, and he's just listening to the last person he spoke to. And if that's Putin, then he's going to be spouting Russian propaganda.
I want to say a couple of things. Let me do this. Paul Goody Debritz, thank you for that. Yes, I also saw the CNN, so thank you for that clarification. I just like showing what the Russians are seeing and sharing, because that's being played much more around the planet than anything American media is playing. And then I want to make something about, make a statement about the taking over. If you can, you share that desktop there I just gave you, Johnny?
Yep.
All right. So this is just from a lot of time in Ukraine. Okay, guys. So here's the deal. We see what Russia is occupying, and I will outline Ukraine for you. So when we see or we hear news articles about, well, it would take 150 years for them to get Ukraine. Well, that's correct at this pace, but that's not the desire or the goal. You see, what will change this war much more than it's changing right now is the push on Sumy, which is happening. There is a massive buildup. I actually put it out on the video today. A couple of weeks ago, I was told by Zhenya and military guys that you will be hearing news about Russia coming into Sumy very strong, and it's going to be very difficult for us to stop them. We're starting to see some of that come to fruition. So that's here. We're seeing, and it's being reported, and it's facts, the buildup on Kharkiv. So those are happening. But really, big if here, But I just want to throw it out there. If Russia was to go and try to get Odessa, okay, and at least siege it to the point where it immobilizes it, the port is no longer functioning at all, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have to worry about all of this, because practically what they've done now is completely landlock Ukraine. And that's the goal. So when you see these articles or people prognosticating, oh, it'll take 1,000 years, they're moving at an inch. Well, tell that to the granny that just lost her 5 kids when the missile hit their building. Forget all of that. The reality is they're close. They can get to Sumy and they can get to Kharkiv. Those are facts. Just going to tell you the truth. They can't get past them because the fortifications and the defenses, Johnny, I took you to the fortification defenses behind Sumy. They're now 10x what you saw, and they were very impressive then. But that is some difficult hilly terrain, but there's access to Sumy. There's easy access to Kharkiv, guys. It's just wide open and flat, some forest areas. FPV drones are now hitting Kharkiv regularly, hitting Sumy. It's the war's changing up there. So if you put pressure on those 2 areas, and you don't even have to take Odessa, but you just continue to siege it, it does make it much more difficult for Ukraine. The other thing is we're close to getting a breakthrough. And I know if people are just joining this, they're going, man, this dude is all pro-Russia. No, I'm zero Russia. I risk my life down here on these lines. I'm just telling you the truth. The truth is we're at critical juncture right now. Russia has taken some serious initiative on the highway connecting Pokrovsk-Mirnograd and Konstantinivka. And it is a critical time right now. Yeah, you can show and validate it, but
that pocket keeps closing.
That pocket is tough, very tough. So it's just important to remember the big picture when you look at that war map, or you hear these things thrown out there. 100 years, they're terrible. Yeah. Ukraine in reality is kicking their tail, but the fact is, there's some challenging places right now. And when we hear U.S. really moving away quickly, it's not good. So yeah, this is the critical area right there. That's the hook in the road.
And Ukraine are really trying to fight back in Touretsk.
Yes.
But they, you know, it looks like Ukraine just doesn't have the massive troops and equipment to be able to enforce a sea change anywhere really along the front line.
It's going to be very difficult.
It seems to be
the
just
whole
little,
Konstantinivka.
Yeah, it seems to be little like tactical hits back at the Russians here and there to try and stem the flow, but you're not sure. You know, the problem, I think part of the problem, to get a bit to talk about the front line a little bit, is that the Ukrainian defenses along the front line have been adapted to the fact that they can't get too many troops to the front line, and so the way of defending the front line is to create a 10 to 15 kilometer corridor of air superiority with regard to drones. Now, what's happened, and this is a particular area, I was talking about this in my frontline update today, this is where it's been happening quite a bit, is the Russians have adapted to that by developing motorcycle attack groups. So where you used to have 3 APCs with 20 people in each APC or whatever, like rammed on them, but then they would become individual targets, would be quite easy to take out with mines, with the weight of them, and with drones, right? So then you'd just have one target you had to hit. Now you've got like 50 motorcycles with the same amount of people on, like 70 people on 50 motorcycles or whatever, and each one of those has to be hit individually. And so because there's no one manning the contact line, you've got a second line of defense back further. What the Russians need to do is break through the drone corridor to hit that second line of defense of machine gunners, mortar crews and whatnot, and they're starting to do that, and that's what's happening around here, where you've got motorcycle attacks that are happening. You know, that's originally what started this sector here, where they gained all the way up to here, is they did a massive motorcycle attack that broke through the lines, and Ukraine will now have to work out how to deal with motorcycles. And it's interesting to hear today that the Ukrainians have produced their own motorcycle units.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure you said that. There's 2 points, and then
they don't attack that much, so you know.
But hang on, because I always want to be completely truthful on this war. Okay, first of all, Yana, Project Constantine is in here, and Thank you for Project Constantine
Hi,
and the
Anna.
work of Peter Fouché. And she made a great comment. I want to draw attention to it. She said, when you hear quite often the rhetoric, well, it'll take Russia 100 years, but to take it out, it removes that human factor of the people that have lost their lives. And that is what we're trying to say as well. So thank you for that, Jan, and thank you for all your work. And guys, we have a joint project coming up. Gertis, Constantine, and myself. Just be ready. It's coming. Jan is finishing up the administrative work behind the scenes. Going to be awesome. That was the commercial. Secondly, when Ukraine started to report a few months ago that Russia's now using motorcycles and mopeds, what happens is everybody starts to laugh. They make memes. They do all of this. And Russia loses a lot of lives. They don't care. They don't care about life. But Johnny, as you very well described, they were able to gain some tactical success by utilizing that, even though it was very costly on the lives. Now, now donkeys, that's a different story. We won't go to donkeys. Okay. That's ridiculous, but funny. But the reality is there is some value tactically, because this is not Vietnam. This is not World War II. This is a drone war. We're trying to encase literal roads with chain link fencing and fishing nets to keep people alive. We have tanks and APCs running around with full wire network systems around them to keep them functioning. So it's mentally, we have to think of a completely different war. All of the warfares from modern history wrapped up into one. Then you add all the technology and drones on top of it, and that's what we have in the Russian.
So I'm curious what you both think about the motorcycles. Is this a good or bad thing? I see it as problematic, but the Russians don't seem to mind losing it. I get it; it works like a cavalry, but still, you have to factor in the technology of the drone defense. And
but the point being, Ukraine is now using them as well.
I understand. I read the article. You have, like hundreds of hours of training or whatever on this. I still think that you have to use it very precisely. And I don't see the Russians using that precisely.
Yeah, no. So here's the situation. I reported this. Luckily, in hindsight, I reported it absolutely on point. So I'm quite happy about this, which is that when motorcycles, because sometimes I get the imposter syndrome where I'm like, do I really know what I'm talking about? I'm no expert on any of this, right? But so I'm just using common sense, right? So what happened is motorcycles started getting seen to be used, as well as SUVs, golf buggies, and quads, right? And initially, this was a sign that they had, and it still is a sign that they were running out of key combat asset equipment, like the traditional APCs, mine resistant and protection vehicles, and infantry fighting vehicles. So they're running out of that, so they were forced to use these suboptimal vehicles. But then they found out that the suboptimal vehicles that they were being forced to use conveyed an advantage. And the advantage they conveyed is, one, they were able to move really quickly on them. Two, there were more targets rather than focused targets of an IFV with 20 people on an IFV. Now you've got 20 people on motorcycles, and you've got to hit all 20 of them with drones. And if drones is the only way that you're really, well, drones and mines, and these motorbikes were sometimes triggering mines, but not all the time. So now they've had to adapt by having lighter triggers to the mines. But still, like the Russian tactic throughout the war has been, in order to take a tree line, they would throw like 5 infantry fighting vehicles at a tree line, knowing that 4 of them would get destroyed, killing 80 people. 20 would get there, 5 might actually be able to hold onto that tree line. Then they send another wave, and out of 100, 5 get to keep it. Then they send another wave, and then eventually they have that tree line. And it's just a numerical advantage that allows them to do that. Well, now they are doing that with motorbikes, and it's essentially the same process, where if a few motorbikes get through, job done, then you send more motorbikes, and now they're just getting cheap Chinese motorcycles, and they're doing exactly the same thing. But the Ukrainians, instead of having 3 targets to hit, so when you immobilize an infantry fighting vehicle, all the people get off, and then they can't move that far because they're still 5 kilometers from the contact line. So you just pick them off at your leisure with those drones. But when you hit, well, you now need far more motorcycles that are moving much quicker, and then they sometimes have 2 people on. So if the one guy gets knocked off, then the other guy can pick it up and drive, and so they are becoming a well-utilized resource, to the point where Ukraine has realized that and is trying to use their own, except Ukraine doesn't do so much attacking.
one of the reasons that Ukraine has had to modify their strategy, and Johnny, I know you've seen a lot of this video. I've seen a lot of it. I get a lot of it sent to me, is the reconnaissance drones are much more active now, and much more they're much more difficult to detect on both sides. This is Russian side and Ukrainian side. For example, the strike in the Sumy Oblast yesterday, the reconnaissance drone just sitting there, and of course Russia brought the Iskanders in and struck the training site, and that's a whole different topic. We're not getting into that. But what is happening right now is when Ukraine is even using armored personnel carriers and armored troop carriers, the moment the door opens for the troops to come in, the FPV drone flies right into the APC and is wounding 6, 8, 10 troops at a time. And it is happening over and over and over. So they're trying to vary their strategy. I mean, honestly, guys, we are 2025, and one of the best defenses in this unbelievable war of power that we've seen basically everything except a tactical nuke. I mean, we've seen some serious glide bombs dropped. Is chain link fence.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Is chain link fence. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I saw a vampire
useful,
drone that was stringing along some barbed wire. So, I mean, they're going to have countermeasures to this pretty quickly. So you can use these motorcycles if you use them very, very strategically, but I don't think that Russia is going to use them very, very strategically. And
Ukraine will.
They will.
They're using
be able to be defeated by. Well, go ahead.
Well, they are using this strategically. I mean, literally, there are places like Tourette's where they have used them strategically to.
Sure. I think they're going to go beyond that, though. I think they're going to say, "Hey, this worked there. Let's send them up."
The problem with barbed wire is that you cannot lay barbed wire on the contact line, or from within 30
you as a
kilometers
human,
of the contact line.
but you as a vampire drone can string it.
No, the ground drones are rolling them out.
UGVs are rolling them out at the moment, but actually that's still not widespread, and it's still is slow and painstaking. So I think if you lay lots of barbed wire out further back, which is kind of what Greg was saying, once you get back further, then there are more substantial defenses of all different types. But at the moment, the motorcycles are providing enough of a headache for the Ukrainians. It's interesting what Greg was just saying about reconnaissance drones. Here is Andrew Perpetua's map, and Andrew's map is brilliant because you can see certain things happening on certain days. Now, I don't know if this was whoever uploaded them all on the same day. First of all, you can see some reconnaissance drones over here being intercepted, geolocated. Zala, Lancet, that's actually a kamikaze drone, so on and so forth. We go back one day and look at this. These are reconnaissance drones, all of these that have been intercepted. Look at that. Look at that near the border. This is, I presume, just going to Belgorod direction here, maybe Kursk still. But
you're up outside of Sumy, man.
Oh yeah, Sumy. Yeah. So that is a massive amount of intercepted reconnaissance drones, and they now know. I was listening to an analysis of this on Tochny. They now use reconnaissance drones as one-way drones. They accept that they're going to lose the reconnaissance drones. So it used to be you'd send like an all-land 10, all-land 30, and then it would come back and you get it and use it again like 5 times, and eventually might go. Now they're pretty much expecting them to be intercepted, but they factor that in and make enough reconnaissance drones. They're firing them across, and then eventually you're going to find your high-level targets like that training site in Sumy, which is really frustrating. Should have learned, etc., etc.
They're not learning, and they need to learn, and it's a big internal issue they're battling about, and it's quite complicated and frustrating, to be honest. That close to the border, 50 kilometers, and you're doing open training like that is ridiculous. I will give you a personal story with a reconnaissance drone and how powerful they are. In February, when Zhenya and I were in Odessa, and I know Yana's here, and we actually met her and Galina the next day, but we were there literally 50 meters from the ballistic missiles that struck the Bristol Hotel and destroyed it. The first one came in and we were there, and then the second one and the third one, and we were trapped literally 50 meters from the zero impact. And of course you feel it and you experience it. You don't hear the missile coming. It's beyond the speed of sound. Everything just blows up. And I have a video up of that. You can go back on my channel if you're here watching on Johnny's or Prof's later. And you can see that experience. But what I want you to understand is about the reconnaissance drone. So we were huddled in this little corner with other people, and you'll see that video, and you see Zhenya on the phone. And I'm saying, hey, man, I mean, listen, we thought we might be in trouble on that one, to be quite honest. We were there close. And I go, what are you doing? What are you doing? He goes, I'm talking to the military. I'm talking to the military. I said, okay, can we go? He says, no, we can't leave, because we were stuck and they were telling us another one was coming. Another one was coming. And this is when we had the all green to go. And Johnny, you'll find this interesting. Zhenya's talking to the military guy, and he says, the reconnaissance drone is still right over you. The recon drone is still right over you. You can't leave. It can bring another missile within a minute. You can't leave until the recon drone is taken out. And then when the recon drone was taken out, Zhenya said, recon drone gone, let's go. We ran out. It was all about the recon drone, not about the missile. Yeah. So once the eyes in the sky were gone, we felt safe to try to run for it.
You can't really shoot without the eyes, right?
Correct.
The eyes facilitate.
Correct.
Everything. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to go back to motorcycles for just a moment before shifting back to drones. So how long before countermeasures to motorcycles are sufficient? So there's a temporary advantage right now with the motorcycles. Okay. Right. But it's not going to last. I mean, something's going to befuddle that. They could dig ditches and befuddle it. So, I mean.
Yeah. Ideally, you have massive trenches the entire length of the front line that motorcycles can't get over until they provide little, I don't know, bridges they carry on their backs or something. Do you know what? It's such a long and fractured front line that you have fortifications in certain areas that are really good, and then you've got gaps, and then you got. I was seeing some analysis somewhere that was saying actually what Ukraine want are far more smaller trench line networks than massive big ones. Well, they want both, I guess, but they need just networks of smaller. Yeah, but you're quite right. You would assume, as is the nature of warfare, that the countermeasures will be in place at some point. And if it gets to a point where they move back to the larger fortifications that sat behind the present front lines, then maybe motorcycles will come up against more barbed wire, more heavy trenches that they would need to negotiate, and it becomes more difficult. But where you've got roads and that's that kind of road that you were just talking about, that Pokros to Konstantinivka T0504 highway, using that and going up there, and that has motorbikes enabled them to take those villages around there. So at the moment, you're right, Greg, Prof, that there is that asymmetry right now, but who knows how long that'll last.
Well, and I would submit to you guys also, just to interject here, and then I hear you, Prof, is whatever you're seeing right now from the Ukrainian side, and I can only say that because I know from the Ukrainian side, and I would assume from the Russian side, anything you're seeing now has been developed and implemented a year ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago. We've also went through an extended, not really a brutally cold winter, but a wet winter. And then it kind of extended. We're just getting into dry season now here in May. So now you talk about motorbikes and you talk about travel and transit and moving lines and all of this. We're really going to see, and this is why Vladimir Putin does not want to quit. There's multiple reasons, but one of the reasons is he's prepared for whatever the summer offensive will look like. They've already began it in some areas, but you now have really dry season from the rest of May, June, July, August, September, October, and about halfway through November. This is the dry season. So we're going to start to see technology that they've prepped to roll out. And it's just like 6 months ago, we go, oh my God, they're riding motorcycles. Okay. Now everybody's riding motorcycles. Yeah, well, in 6 months from now, we're going to be going, holy moly, you see what they're doing? The other thing you have to remember is you talking about dangerous. Forget the drones. And believe me, they're dangerous, but I'm assuming, like, if I was on a motorcycle, we'd have a drone we'd have a sugar cube here, at least to help us the much as we can. But there are so many landmines everywhere around the lines. Where are these guys, both sides, Russia, Ukraine, riding these motorcycles? I mean, it's just, hey, Indescribably dangerous.
Well, one of the adaptations is changing the triggers on a landmine. So, broadly speaking, most landmines,
Right.
it depends what the triggers are, but would need something heavier than motorcycles to go over them. But we are now seeing motorcycles blow up on landmines. And I think the Ukrainians are now sending over, landmines. I don't know how they're laying them. There are different ways you can lay landmines. Of course, you can get sappers to go out and lay them individually. That doesn't really happen so much. More your ram shells fired from artillery can release like 19 landmines, or you might get drones dropping them, or you might different ways of laying them. You can get the Russians use those trucks that fire the landmines off from the side out these tubes, and so different ways.
I will interject a little bit of American humor here, and Prof will get it. You won't, Johnny, but you'll get it regardless. I'll send it to you. But the Andy Griffith show, Barney Fife had a motorcycle, and he was being the motorcycle cop, and he was riding around Mayberry. This is from the 60s, Johnny. And he was tormenting everybody riding his motorcycle around. And Andy, the sheriff, and Aunt B were going, what are we going to do about Barney? How are we going to stop that guy on the motorcycle? And it's a situational comedy from the 60s, classic American. I know some people
I was only born in 1992, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. And I know people that our Americans seen Andy Griffith show will know. Listen, here it is. Yeah, the second time when he's born again. Yes. But Aunt B says, ouch. Well, I watched a World War II movie where the Germans were coming through on the motorcycles and the Americans took a piano wire and they tied it between two trees. Nobody was on the motorcycles anymore. There's no telling what we're going to see because defense will come.
So there's two things about this. One is that the new ground forces commander, the most recently installed guy that just was put in this past week, he's the one that developed the motorcycle doctrine. And so I think that he's going to like it. And when you implement something, you like it too much, right? You can't see where the faults are very often. I'm just talking organizationally, not even just because they're Russia, but Russia has this, they go past the sell-by date. So I think they're going to overplay their hand, and they're going to be doing the equivalent of trying to sell people to buy VHS tapes in a digital world where we stream. So they're going to use them until they don't work and don't work and don't work and don't work and don't work. And it's going to be massively bad for the Russians over time, because I don't think they'll adjust very quickly. It's going to be a lot of motorcycles over the summer. That's my sense of it. And I could be wrong, but that's what I predict.
Yeah, we're still back in this where we were 2 years ago, which is the difference between the two sides is that Russia has more people than Ukraine has, and how long can they keep expending all of these people at ratios that are horrific for the Russians, but they don't really care. I was showing a video this morning where they were in some barrack, in some billet somewhere, where the Russians were saying there's not a single Russian here. And he was going around saying, these are Tajik, that's a Kazakh, I'm a Buryat, Yakut. I know that some of those are in the Russian Federation. But the idea was these guys are saying, like, none of us are Russians, and we're all fighting for Russia. So, Russia can keep recruiting at 30,000. I don't know if that's true, but the idea is that they're recruiting at 30 to 40,000 a month. And if they can keep doing that, then they'll keep eking out these advantages. And if that translates into a negotiating advantage, then that is a problem for Ukraine, especially when Donald Trump is on the side of Putin. And just to go back to the negotiations, just to remind you, if you'd heard, to let you know if you didn't, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, said that Russia would not agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine without preconditions. So totally, of course, expected, but as if you didn't know, this is what Russia are believing. That's why now when they tell us let's have a truce, and then we'll see, no guys, we have already been in these situations, we don't want that anymore. Russia is just playing for time. Simple as that.
And you did see Putin in Kursk with the governor talking about Sumy.
Yes, yeah.
He wants more.
Do you want to let people know about that?
Yeah, it's well, talk about it, Prof, and I'll actually play the video for you.
So he's in Kursk, and he's joking about how, well, the new governor of Sumy, he just wants more land, and talking about, or not, governor of Kursk wants more land, like Sumy land, and so that's good for him. Like yeah. And so, yeah, funny stuff.
Well, he's meeting there. They're complaining that they're being hit with drones, and they want a buffer zone. And then how much of a buffer zone do you want? Well, the bigger the better. So they go, well, let's just take Sumi. Everybody in the crowd there at the governor's meeting claps, and Putin says, well, that's what we like. We like big things. That's why I put him in as the governor. And that's the story behind it. But it's reality of what we're facing. And you can't just say, oh, well, they're just goofing off there and joking, whatever. No, there's Russian troops on Sumi territory right now, and they're building up.
And
while you do that, I'll find the video.
If they had decent artillery, they would be able to hit Sumi directly with artillery. I mean, it's within really good range artillery distance, Sumi. So it is, yeah, it's not good that at all. What I find interesting on a negotiating front is this. So
here you go. Here you go. Before you do that, here you go.
Before,
let's do. Actually, I want to do two. Okay, so a lot of you guys probably haven't seen these. Then here you go. Play that one first.
Drones are a problem. We still have to push them back a bit further, and we fully support you in what you've said. May God give you health to do it. How many kilometers do we need between us? Well, I think that Sumi needs to be ours. Absolutely. So that district will belong to Kursk. You see, they are attacking us, so what is there to talk about? We can't live like this, like a peninsula. We need to have more, at least Sumi. It's the right thing, but I think we will win with you. You're the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. But that's why we chose Alexander Sayevich as the governor. He also likes big things.
There you go. It's the big things. Now, there's one other thing, and in case you guys didn't see my video
earlier, the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah, play it.
Okay.
Has shown many times throughout history that it is always with its people. Always. We recently celebrated the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. And everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but most people, they know that when the war started, it was Molotov who gave a speech. He said, "Citizens." And then when they realized what was happening, Stalin used different words. Brothers and sisters. And the Russian Orthodox Church, regardless of the mistreatment it had suffered from the authorities, when the time of trial came, it fully and completely forgot all of those things, all of the hardships, everything they had gone through, and they stood to defend the fatherland. And the same is happening right now.
Wow.
That's today in Kursk. So you had, and there was multiple things said. I had all of them there, and Lavrov stuff in the earlier video if you guys missed it. But they make jokes about Sumi, laughing, but this is why we do big things. That's why I put you in as governor, and Russian troops are there and building up. So you have to understand it and recognize it for what it is. But then now you're hearing the references to Stalin and brothers and sisters and fatherland. And this is what we're fighting for now.
That's not accidental either. So there are like 115 or so, roughly, give or take 5 monuments to Stalin. 90 plus of those have gone up during Putin's time.
Yeah.
In Russia. Yeah.
Wow.
It was all knocked down, and then he started putting them back up. Isn't that crazy?
A funny time we're living in. So I wanted to, if I may, just share some ideas about what Europe might do now then. So we've got, and I don't know how long you've got, Prof, but we have the US receding and possibly Trump leading America away from the world stage and giving up on Ukraine. Be interesting to see what the reaction would be from stalwart defenders of Ukraine from within the Republican Congress, so senators particularly, and then people like Ron Bacon as well, like people who are staunch supporters of Ukraine, who are still in the Republican Party. I'll be interested to see if the US formally kind of walked away from Ukraine, what would happen. But here, Finnish president, this is just out, by the way, while you guys were speaking, a Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, who's a bit of a Trump whisperer, played golf with Trump. People are thinking he's a useful guy to have in Trump's ear, says the US has not abandoned its mediator role between Russia and Ukraine. He added that Europe will join as co-mediator, with talks continuing at various levels, including next week at the Vatican. So let's talk about the Vatican being the next one. We've got, thankfully, the new president of Romania saying, I don't really believe that peace in Ukraine will come soon. So I'm glad that Europeans have collectively decided to continue supporting Ukraine until the most reasonable peace is achieved for them. That's really useful, having the Romanian president on side as well. So that's a fantastic election victory. Then we've got, because we had heard that the US has kind of formally said that we don't want Zelensky at the next NATO meeting, the next NATO summit in, I think, June. And now today, again, this is just out, Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has said that, and NATO chief Mark Rutte, the former Dutch Prime Minister, actually, has said they would love to invite Zelensky to the NATO summit in The Hague. But Rutte says the agenda isn't finalized yet and the announcement is coming soon. So, and then I'll leave you with this one, or not leave you, I'll let you guys then comment. Here we have a German defense minister, Boris Pistorius. So the important part here is that Friedrich Merz, the new chancellor for Germany, had said this week that we are going to work in lockstep with the US, and we're going to hit them with these sanctions. And then the US just kind of evaporated. And then he was left going, I presume he's left going, oh shit, what do I do now? I've just committed with the US, because the US committed on telephone call when, back when Istanbul sort of time. And so maybe he's been left with his pants down, or at least, something needs to happen. So German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has accused the US President Donald Trump of poor negotiating tactics in the struggle for a ceasefire in Ukraine. Quote, he simply misjudged the negotiating situation with Putin, the Minister of Defense said. So there's some interesting European views coming out there. What I, from a pro-Ukrainian point of view, would like to see would be a divergence from the US, and just Europe to say, right, screw it, sod the US, are not helping at all. We need to just go alone, sadly enough, but whether they have enough wherewithal and resources to be able to do that, I don't know.
So I'm proud of the Europeans that on the 19th, Trump and Putin have this telephone call, and then on the 20th, they still do the sanctions anyway, instead of backing off and saying, well, another if-then statement. Well, if this doesn't happen by that point, and they're already working on the next round of sanctions, and that's another good thing. So I'm glad that they did that. Gary Kasparov said this, and I'm quoting here. You're not seeing it on the screen, but he said the delicate dance of acknowledging that Trump will never support new pressure against Russia, while also not wanting America to completely turn against Ukraine and Europe.
Yeah.
The U.S. is still helping Ukraine, if mostly out of inertia. Yeah, I think that's about where we are. That's a good summary. So now, they have to be diplomatic and say Trump's in it, but Trump actually, I think, wants them to do the dirty work, kind of like a married couple who I don't really want to be the bad guy with the kids. I think, that's where Trump is. I don't really want to, I'm not going to be the one to do whatever. And well, if they did it, well, I mean, you know how she is, right? I mean, she has to be a hard case. And, I'm not like that. I think that's where Trump kind of is. And I could be wrong. That's just my perception. But
I would do some serious bluff calling here. Well, I would be tempted for a European leader, or at least to get people within European governments to kind of go down how can we kind of publicly intimate that Trump is weak. I think Trump would respond to being called weak, and he would want to prove them wrong. And I think if Europe said, well, if the US is going to be weak, if Trump is going to be weak on Russia, if Trump is going to let Putin steamroller him, then we are going to have to stand up for democracy around the world.
But how to say it exactly? Like that could backfire or that could go well.
It could, but high risk, high reward. Like what have you got to lose here? Like as far as a European nation saying that, yeah, okay, sanctions and blah blah blah, but as it's not sanctions, tariffs. But I would really be inclined to say that. Yes, Greg.
I stand by
that's enough.
my analysis that Donald Trump detests Vladimir Zelensky, hates Ukraine. His head is full of the propaganda filled by people like Tucker Carlson and others in his circle. And I don't think he has enough brain power to understand. I think he has some serious issues. When you listen, I'm not here to make fun of it or joke, but when you even under pressure, in reference to, and it's very sad, Joseph Biden's terrible cancer diagnosis, and they want to start running with all these conspiracies, whatever. I'm not going down any of those holes, but when you're standing in front of a camera and you call it stage 9 stage 9 cancer, I understand your intelligence level. Listen, we all speak for livings. We're in front of cameras. That is a professor at a university. You are a tippling philosopher. I'm a preacher. We're all YouTubers now. This is what we do for a living. We don't make those kind of mistakes. That's the stinking president of the United States. And if you don't have enough sense to know that there is no such thing as stage 9 cancer, and you want to be disrespectful to people in your circle, you can't go from one day calling him a dictator to the next day calling him the president. No, I don't think he has enough intelligence to do the smooth move that Professor suggested.
Do you know the other thing?
I wasn't suggesting that he would that Trump was going to make some smooth move. I was saying that it would be diplomats from Europe that would just kind of needle him into that carefully. Like, but again, that's my assumption that Trump doesn't want to be seen as less than the alpha. But I may very well be wrong about that.
Well, let's look at it this way. Let's look at it this way. No matter what you think about him, anybody in the world, wherever you're watching, and no matter, politically, religiously, socially, whatever, if you look at the history of Marco Rubio and the immigrant, the Cuban background, the immigration, the education, forget the politics. He really is a bright guy. So for him to fall so far to the level that he's now at, I don't see how somebody from Europe is going to sway Donald Trump. If Marco Rubio can't, I don't see how.
Yeah, no, but it's sway.
But they're not.
The swaying is calling him out as weak. Like Rubio's never going to do that. Like if
Rubio wants the precious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like he's not going to stand up. If someone said, "Oh, that is weak," like Trump is weak, I thought he's a strong ruler, but actually he's pretty weak. I mean, even Putin eats him for breakfast. Like that's the sort of thing that will go like Trump would go, right, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like I'm going to sanction the crap out of these guys. Do you know what I mean? Is that that's the only I see that as the only way of mobilizing Trump's morality here. Well, it's not morality, it's mobilizing his sense of self and his narcissism. Is like, no, I can't be seen as weak. And honestly, other than that, I think,
well, that clarification, now I understand both of what you're saying. Oh, I get that. Okay, so I think I had it in the thumbnail a couple of days ago after the call, or one of the videos I've done in the last few days. Been a lot of them because so much going on, but it was like Putin ended the call and the voice box, his little statement is, well, that was easy. I really think it's easy for him to deal with Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need somebody to make it difficult.
No pushback.
Exactly.
I love this. Is
this a selfie?
This is millionaires a meme. Who wants to be a millionaire? What's the most effective way to stop aggressive war in the 21st century? A, put pressure on the victim. B, use caps lock in posts. C, beautiful phone call. D, trade with the aggressor. Right? And he's looking at going, no, which one? All of them. No, all of them. Or none of them. Like, I just love it. Anyway, sorry.
That's good.
Yeah. So, Europe are in a tough situation because they still need the US. The US provides things still for Ukraine, and actually there is aid still coming through from pre-arranged contracts, and in fact, you know, there's quite a lot of aid still coming through from the US, nothing to do with Trump giving any extra aid. And so, you know, yes, Europe still needs the US, but how long can you just keep hoping that Trump's going to change his tune when clearly he's not? So, you know, yeah.
Do you guys have any thoughts on the killing of Portnoy?
Well,
any
Spanish
thoughts? Just
media,
how it's going to be spun, how it's going to be, are they going to use it?
Spanish media are saying it's to do with finances.
Debt.
Well, that's,
I know.
Yeah, debt.
Yeah.
So just explain who he is to the audience.
He was the advisor for Yanukovych. He's basically a traitor to Ukraine, to be quite honest.
Is it proven that
Yanukovych was the president of Ukraine?
Was it proven that it's somehow SBU related or something?
No,
or
nothing is proven at all.
Just
you know,
happens to be
shot in the back of the head.
Shot in the back of the head, dropping his kids off at the
like 4 times or something. In the chest, in the neck, the back of the head.
Yes.
So the thing about
I mean, this was a key guy in Yanukovych. I mean, especially in regard to the giving away of Crimea. Okay, this dude's right in the middle of all of that mess.
The only thing, I was watching a series in the UK called Unforgotten. It's like a cold case. You know, they find a dead body, blah blah, try and work out who's killed them. And there was this comment the other day, which is like they're interviewing this guy who, like, the person who's dead owed money to. He's like, well, what's the point of me killing him? Like, if he owes me money, like, I'm never going to get that money back if I killed him. Right. So it's like, yeah, it's a pretty good point, actually. And there's this element, like, if he did owe money, then what's the point of killing him? So I don't know. But then, of course, mafia still, kill or whatever.
I don't know. I punted on that story this morning. I mean, like, you can only cover so much, and I didn't have enough facts to know if it's traced back. But I mean, I know the Ukrainians' mentality is kind of like the Mossad. Like, if they find a target that they, you know, guys shooting missiles at a Russian general shooting missiles at them, we're going to go after them. And you can blend in fairly easily into Moscow and go to the whatever. I know this guy was in Spain, but that was my first thought. But I didn't know
Russian,
that.
There's quite a big Russian community in Spain. So that Ukrainian helicopter pilot, the Russian helicopter pilot that defected,
yeah.
And then he went to Spain, but he didn't actually sort of cross the T's and dot the I's. He wasn't very careful about his situation. He ended up getting killed in Spain because there are quite a lot of Russians in Spain doing their thing. So I don't know.
So I just let that story go because there are so many other directions to go.
One thing.
Zelensky's statement tonight, I'm reading it right now, and since we're live, I won't put a video. We'll do it here. He talks about the defense of Ukraine forces maintaining combat capabilities. He's also talking about the most difficult situation is in the Pokrovsk area and also outside of Kursk and Belgorod and the Sumy region. So he's calling it out tonight. And then his last paragraph, he says, unfortunately, the Russians show no signals of a ceasefire, and they are not yet ready to end the war. And I'm quoting him here. Therefore, all our forms of pressure, all our work with partners to put pressure on Russia are absolutely necessary. Pressure convinces. But then he adds this. He hasn't been saying this lately. Pressure on the battlefield. Pressure on the economy. And that is exactly what sanctions are for. Pressure in politics. I want to thank everyone who supports Ukraine. So he hasn't called out the battlefield as far as being aggressive, really trying to push for a ceasefire. But tonight
it's like everybody's playing this weird game where nobody can actually say what it is, but they're all trying to pretend like they're all working together, but they're not. But it's a very weird thing. Zelensky's playing this with Trump. On the other side, Putin's playing this with Trump, trying to pretend like he's really interested in peace when he clearly isn't. It's a strange thing to watch.
What is good news? No, not that one. It is this. So Donald Tusk today. So Poland has intercepted a Russian sanctions evading ship near critical Baltic power cable, according to Donald Tusk. After the effective intervention of our military, the ship sailed to one of the Russian ports. Polish Prime Minister wrote on Twitter. So they haven't detained it, but there's been like I'm liking Tusk at the moment, there's a bit of rhetoric coming from him. I know that there are issues with trade coming in from Ukraine into the EU, and so the EU are going to have to tighten their tariffs, and that's going to hurt Ukraine a little bit, and that's to protect EU farmers, and I completely understand that, and so that could be an issue between Poland and Ukraine, but he's also said Ukraine must join NATO, and this is kind of again against what Trump and his administration said. It's a matter of Poland's security, not political sympathy. So again, all here that talking about not just like a charitable kind of statement, but actually in Poland's best interest. Just yesterday, they supported Ukraine's NATO bid. Today, they back a candidate who opposes it outright. So what he's talking about here is Nawrocki, who is so in Poland that you had the first round of the presidential elections that just took place, and it was the coalition, the Tusk coalition candidate, who is the mayor of Warsaw, up against this populist right wing, rather similar to George Simeon in Romania, who, but in Poland it's quite complicated because the Law and Justice Party, the PIS, are broadly anti-Russia and pro-Ukraine. They've got bipartisan support for Ukraine. But this guy, who the PIS are now supporting, started off as an independent and is now kind of supported by the PIS. He has now been under pressure from the far right in Poland to then change his position on Ukraine joining NATO. So Nawrocki is now up for president, is now saying, if I'm president, I will be against Ukraine joining NATO. So now Ukraine's being brought into the limelight for this Polish presidential election. So this is why Donald Schiff has said in a pointed statement, Donald Tusk has said he's accused the PIS party of a stunning overnight shift. Just yesterday, they supported Ukraine's NATO bid. Today, they back a candidate who opposes it outright. So it's interesting. Poland is in an interesting position where there's an awful lot going on. There's been this recognition that there's Russian sabotage been going on in Poland with burning of shopping malls, and yet you still have the far right in Poland being pro appeasement, pro Russia, and it's really, really annoying. Here, Polish Prime Minister sharply responded to presidential candidate Karol Nawrocki, who suggested Poland might withdraw support for Ukraine's NATO membership. By endorsing this, Nawrocki signs up for Ukraine's capitulation and dismemberment. Deadly dangerous for Poland. So I'm liking Tusk's position there. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, I've got a question for you real quick before I got to bail. So you were reading that book on populism. I've just finished my third on populism. How has that informed your thinking?
Do you know what? I still need to read it. I haven't finished it, but I've just done a video. Funny enough, though, I've just done a whole hour-and-a-half video. This is what my audience have got to look forward to: an hour and a half of me banging on about Reform UK in Britain, who are a populist, right-wing populist movement with elements of that realize that they've got a lot of working class union voters that they've attracted on issues of immigration, and they so there'll be elements of left-wing economics, actually, which you could argue Trump's MAGA, with
is very much like that. Yeah.
So I see Reform as just a carbon copy of MAGA republicanism and Rassemblement National and AFD and etc. And I'm quite fascinated in populism at the moment, which is invariably this idea of elites, us against them. So we're going to rise the populace up against the elites, where the elites in the US, for example, have been the political establishment, which Democrats, interestingly, you would have 20 years ago said the Republican GOP was kind of the political establishment. Now the Democrats are standing up for the democratic institutional norms and mechanisms, which is fascinating. But what MAGA republicanism has done as a populist movement is replace political elites with oligarchy, broligarchs, and tech elites. So you're replacing it with billionaire class. Yes. And if the Democrats ever want to get back in, that's what they've got to attack. Which is, you are saying you're draining the swamp, but you're replacing the swamp with something more toxic. And the same with the UK. You look at someone like Nigel Farage, who is a former stockbroker, public school educated, which is private school educated, elite himself, and you've got Rupert Lowe and Richard Tice. All of these people are the actual elites running this populist party. And so, are these the people that are going to look after the working class? No, they're not. And so there are loads of interesting dynamics. Anyway, I don't want to.
So what we see with Trump is also the same thing, roughly. I mean, with its own flavor of what you see with reform in the UK, or what you see with Orban, what you see with what almost happened with the Romania. Like it's everywhere. And I'm trying to understand why it's so everywhere. The best I can understand is that the 2008 recession has really jolted the system and caused them to, like, you know what, it's these guys up here at the top. They're the ones that we have to look at that are, And
here's my controversial opinion.
Go ahead.
I think there's a really large degree of political laziness. And actually, I'm going to swear here, it pisses me off. So one of the things I really hate is when someone says they're all the same, right? Democrats, Republicans, these politicians are all the same. Like Labour, Conservatives, Greens, Liberals. No, they're not all the same. They have vastly different interpretations of what governance should be. And I think it's politically lazy for you to say they're all the same. And you only genuinely hear that from people who are actually quite politically unengaged. And there's a level of political illiteracy and laziness that exists that I think requires us to think long and hard about how we teach and educate people politically. And I think politics and civics needs to be, in the UK, I can't speak for the US, but needs to be part of our formal education system. Like, we need to be learning about it more, because there's a sense of disengagement from politics that leads people to go, oh, they're all the same. I'm going to disengage and I'm just going to vote for the anti-establishment party. So you've got this movement of anti-establishment parties and success of them around the world, which is partly born out of maybe hard times and economic and austerity measures and stuff like that, and 2008 onwards, but also partly to do with, actually, and it's quite insulting possibly to a lot of people, but I think there's political laziness going on.
So one of those books that I was reading was Empire of Resentment, and in it the author made a great point that they have particularly MAGA and the populists that are there have a very shallow ideological understanding. And that makes sense, because you could be, say, like, if you're pro free market, but now Trump says we're pro tariffs. Well, we're pro tariffs, right? Like, how did that happen?
They're pro personality.
Yeah. So they're ideologically very shallow. And I think that there's something to that. They're just angry, but they don't really know what they like, why you think what you think. I know what I think, why I think what I think. And I can defend that. But that's different. By the way, thank you.
Did he just call MAGA shallow, guys? Let's hear it for the prof.
I've never been pro MAGA. I'm a conservative.
I know, I'm just having fun.
Something very foreign. They're
no, I'm just validating you, because people give you such a hard time, but they don't know the real prof. I mean, hello, he just said it.
Defend MAGA.
Exactly, he's not.
So I grew up in New Jersey, and while you're saying they're all the same is shallow, we used to say in New Jersey, they're all a bunch of crooks. That was a true statement. And on that, on that, I'm going to bail.
Thanks, Prof.
Okay, well, Prof, it's really good to have you on board, mate.
Thanks, man. See you later.
Thank you, Prof. Yep.
Greg, we have love it.
Come on, man. I'm just getting woke up here now.
You are.
MAGA is crazy. It was very good. Let me ask you something. No, I'm not in any hurry. We also have a lot of thanks and comments to do and all of this. Are you familiar with the advisor to President Putin? His name is Kubyakov.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to put a video out on this guy, maybe tonight. So guys, be looking for it. I want to translate this, but he came out today and says that the USSR still legally exists.
Ugh.
And the procedure for the dissolution, technically, of the Soviet Union in 91 was violated. If the USSR is not dissolved, then it logically follows that the Ukrainian crisis is an internal process, and we are having our constitutional law experts assess this and confirm it. Now, the reason I bring attention to that is because is today making that statement. You know, you look at the clues. You have Putin talking about more expansion, Sumi, the great Russian Orthodox Church spreading goodness wherever it goes. You have the references to Stalin, but then you have the Putin statement from a couple of days ago, the day before the call. He said, and I quote, I need to play that video as well to put reference for this. He said, I think on the phone call that we'll have, it will go well. So we respect America's right to deal with their internal issues. And I believe that Trump will respect our rights to deal with our internal issues. And he was meaning Ukraine. And now today, Kubyakov coming out talking about its internal issues. So we may see a whole narrative change here since we see some backing up quickly from
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. You have to watch these steps, man.
That's a
yeah. Tuma, Russia currently investigating the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's just coming out, so I'll put a video out on this and translate his speech.
What are your thoughts on, before we go and do some thanks? What are have I got this? Yes, I have got this one. So at the moment, Max24 says massive drone attacks on Russia and Crimea. Okay, so every night it appears, or I'm guessing it's every night, or at least most nights, there are widespread drone attacks on Russia, but there's very little evidence of these taking place. Russia admits that, like, so for example, last night they said 150 something drones were shot down, and so which is an admission that there were an awful lot of drones sent in. But is it that there's so much OPSEC that or regulation that if Russians release that footage that they'll get into a lot of trouble? Is it because it's happening in the middle of nowhere, not near where anyone's going to be driving past with a mobile phone at 4 a.m. in the morning and taking pictures of this? Like, there's very little battle damage assessment coming out.
Well, let me give you this. They keep it quiet. I can tell you, though, regularly airport closures are taking place around Moscow.
That's happening today, actually, in the daytime.
Yes, they closed the airport, so we know the airspace is compromised, not only there, but also in the cities that would border Ukraine, where these drones would get to within 500-700 kilometers. So we know that's a fact. We do have footage. You are right. They keep it quiet a lot. But I will tell you, if there's any question, I follow Sternyenko, everything, his analysis, everything's in Ukrainian. So, unless you're able to get it all translated or understand the language, you're out, but really good. But what Sternyenko does is when Ukrainians launch their drones at night, he'll come on and he'll begin to troll a little bit, and he'll say, drone alert, Moscow, Kursk, Voronezh, Samara, Stalingrad, Kazan, coming to you quickly. And he trolls a little bit. So, A, is Ukraine putting out this massive amount of drones each night? Yes. And during the daytime. That's a fact. B, is it having an effect? Absolutely. I mean, we get validation where they've hit a ball bearing plant or an ammo dump, or they're closing airspace. But you're very good. Russia keeps the lid on the video, buddy.
Yeah, that's it. So because there's a really big difference between the number of drones that are being sent into Russia, as far as we can work out, and the amount of evidence we have. I mean, but that's a difference from like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, where we were seeing, I know they're probably not hitting a lot of refineries at the moment. And that's interesting why
they've already blown all those up.
Do you think that's why? I mean, there's still more.
I'm just having a little bit of fun. We've been streaming for an hour and a half. I will tell you that Moscow Mayor Sobyanin just put out 3 minutes ago in Moscow today. Basically, he's apologizing to the residents. It's been a difficult day with air alarms. We've shot down 27 drones over Moscow City, and that's why the airports have been going on and off, and there's delays. I mean, they're there. But you're right. You don't, for some reason, you don't see a lot of the footage.
There's less footage now than like 6 months ago, and I guess that's what I'm trying to work out. Like, is that an indication of there being less success in hitting stuff, or is that because Russia has done something about closing down footage getting out? Like,
I think it's a combination. Yes, Sternyenko just put out drone safety in Tula, Ryazan, Moscow, Kaluga, Oryol, Lipetsk, Kursk, and Bryansk coming. So, I mean, they're slinging them, man, and they're hitting targets. It's, and yeah, Moscow region under mass attack 27 minutes ago from Sternyenko, confirming what the Moscow mayor is saying. So, you know, the information's there, but, you know, not a lot of, you're right. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, just because we used to see so much footage coming out of Russian stuff getting hit, and you're hearing that there's even more drones being sent. Like last night, it's a huge night of drones supposedly, and we have one semiconductor factory. That's all the footage we had today, as far as I can work out. And so, you know, I'm just trying to join the dots there and work out exactly what is happening. I'm hoping that there is just a lot of damage to stuff and we're not hearing about it, and it hurts the Russian economy, and you know, it will have an effect that we're just sadly, you know, not aware of.
I'll tell you, there was also some video today, and there was two things that we need to pay attention to. I already shared earlier in the stream about the Iranian statements coming out, and I'll try to put those in a video and put them together with the Chinese statements. The Chinese statements were also coming out in regard to how Trump is dealing with Russia, and you're seeing that relationship develop even further between Russia and China, and Russia and Iran, and China and Iran. So I don't think it's that they're running out, but for sure, for some reason, we do see less video or photos.
Yeah, I don't know why,
but they're hitting.
Yeah, I hope so. Right. Big thanks. We're gonna sorry to be fairly brisk with these because we have a number. Thank you very much in advance to all the people who support both the channels.
I'll do it. Johnny Neverguard, Norwegian Island Dweller. Thank you. We just passed 61,000 subscribers. Thank you for that, Johnny Neverguard.
Petra Olsen. I just think that you and Greg are just like my subscribers. Not that I'm particularly bothered, but you've overtaken me, and Prof. Gerdes massively overtook me ages ago. I'm not for everyone is all I can surmise.
Well,
like
we're not either, but I think
like 8 hours of me banging on a day, I think is you have got to be a special niche in the YouTube world to appreciate.
Well, listen, there's only one Johnny Pierce, and I watch you every day. I think all together our voices make strong because we bring it from different angles. And, you know, when you mix it all together, you can really get a clear picture. So
I'd hope so.
For me, we're all a team.
Absolutely. Petra Olsen, thank you on behalf of Greg. Goose Springsteen, hey JP, bit of a question of opportunity, but have you covered the arson attacks on the car and residences associated with Keir Starmer? So our Prime Minister has had a number of his pieces of property like car and residences attacked, and actually 2 Ukrainian passport holders have been arrested, possible Russian related. I don't know enough details about this, but I did talk about it the other day in one of my videos, Goose. But I suggest it's one of two things: either you've got pro-Russian Ukrainians doing that, or you've got people who have a price, and the Russians are prepared probably to spend a little bit of money, as the Ukrainians do with Russians inside Russia. So some of the sabotage events that take place, like burning down of railway relay points in Russia, will be Russians who don't necessarily hate Russia, but if a Ukrainian dark web entity comes up to them and says, we're going to pay you $500 to do this, and you're desperate for money, you're going to go and burn a railway relay down, is what I'm saying. Like, so here,
this is how the recruitment centers have been bombed quite regularly
Yeah.
over the last few
Yeah.
months in Ukraine was
14-year-old girls and stuff get. Oh,
Yes.
the other thing is like the price is also blackmail. So sorry, I forgot.
$1,000. Yep.
Yeah. You've got either money or blackmail. So people like 14-year-old girl getting blackmailed with probably some internet thing, unfortunate thing, ends up going to try and burn something down. So I don't know enough about that position, so it's any one of those options.
I was going to
but
ask you the same
thanks,
question,
Bruce.
so I'm thankful that question came, because honestly, when I look at UK politics, I always come to you and Jonathan Fink just to understand the clarity of it, because it's quite complicated sometimes for us outside of the UK to understand. So thank you.
Adam Rounds, thank you for 5 Greg Terry memberships there.
Man.
That's, very good. F Oink starting off the love there, so that's kind for Greg. Daddy Jim for Greg, congrats on 61K.
Thank you, Daddy Jim. And I know that's 20 quid. I learned that from Johnny.
Good on you.
So you're the dog's bollocks, Daddy Jim.
Kevin Force, thanks for the ATP Geopolitics memberships, and Michael Future. Really appreciated, guys.
Chinese
Thank
expert.
you. Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Suzanne Melendi, when it comes to Putin, Trump's zigs are exactly his moral core values. Yeah, I would agree that his moral values, if he has any, are just aligned to making money, being a strong man, and appeasing Russia. And I think that's where he's at. Johnny, in that regard, this one's for me. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Have a beer. I will actually. Do you mind if I have a wine? Is that okay? But thank you.
I have almost finished my iced tea during the stream. So thank you, guys.
Oh, dearie me. Richard Demi, thank you for the 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Julian Roster, such an amazing. Thanks, Richard, by the way. Julian, amazing supporter. Lindsey Graham's bill now has 78 co-sponsors. Oh, I've learned something. So it was 72, then it was 73, now 78, including, you are joking, Tommy Tuberville. Is that because he got absolutely rinsed for saying that despicable stuff that seemed to be pro-Putin, who just the other day was parroting Russian propaganda? That is amazing that he would put a sanctions, his signature to a sanctions bill. That's fantastic news. But the question is, can you explain some American politics to me, Greg?
I'll do my best.
So we know that during the 7 months of no aid from the US to Ukraine, that the key was held by Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the lower house, the House of Representatives. So he refused to put a bill through that way to then, I presume, get through to the Senate so that the Senate could sign it off, and because they're much more likely to do that. Can you get stuff going the other way? And can the Senate put through things without having Mike Johnson have any say in it? So therefore it would be up to the Senate leader, John Toon.
It will have to go through both houses regardless.
But
it always goes from
Mike Johnson can
lower house to the upper house.
So
well, the Speaker of the House is the third most powerful person in the United States government. So you have the President of the United States, and then you have the Vice President, and he is also resides over the Senate. And then you have the House of Representatives, and the person elected there right now, of course, Mike Johnson, who's turning in more of a weasel every day. Despicable. It just, his face is starting to aggravate me. Anyway,
so it can. I'm just looking. Sorry,
okay.
AI has told me that Senate can pass a bill, then it needs to be voted on or passed by the House of Representatives.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. It's still it can, but it typically doesn't, because you've got more to deal with in the House. It typically goes House to Senate. Regardless, it's got to pass both houses.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So actually, that
I'm trying to get confirmation of who has signed this bill, because who is who
sponsored it.
It's Lindsey Graham. Because I'm going to tell you something. If Tuberville has, does anybody have a link? Because if Tuberville has actually done this, it's big. It's much bigger than you realize.
Yeah,
because that's a big statement against Trump. So
although it's probably not a statement against Trump. Well,
no, it is. Listen, for Tuberville. Yes.
Yeah.
For Tuberville.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I'll have to look into that. Thanks for that, Julian, though. And thanks for the support. So we have Daddy Jim. Can't the EU impose secondary sanctions too? They get as much from China and India as the US. Let's just bypass the US and go it alone. Yeah, I guess they can. But here's the issue with here's why, in my opinion, this is speculation from someone that is not an expert. This is just my common sense. Why I think that Europe wants US to be a part of all sanctions and all actions against Russia is that if the US isn't a party to sanctions, then it is deleterious for people in the EU. Because if you are going to go alone on sanctions, that gives a competitive advantage. So say the EU was going to sanction and secondary sanction and do all these heavy things on Russia. Say, for example, let's just pick, I don't know, oil, right? You're going to go crazy on oil, right? Or not oil because the US produces its own. I don't know, something widgets, right? You're going to go heavy on sanctioning widgets. And the EU goes nuts on Russian widgets, and they can't sell widgets to the EU. And then you put secondary sanctions from European banks on Chinese and Indian banks that deal in the selling of widgets to China and India, etc., etc. If the US aren't on board with that, then the US can get cheap widgets, and we aren't going to be sanctioning the US. And so nations who aren't involved in sanctions get to buy that stuff cheap from Russia because they'll be trying to look for people to sell their stuff to. And what that means is that then Europe has to buy widgets in more expensively because they can't get cheap widgets from Russia. And so if you do unilateral sanctions from the EU's point of view, it actually disadvantages EU citizens, consumers, because you will end up having inflation in the EU and the US getting by on buying cheap stuff from Russia because they're not fulfilling the sanctions and then going through the cost of implementing the sanctions. So actually, we really need the US to be a party to the sanctions, not just from an enforcement point of view and the US Treasury being exceptionally good at enforcing sanctions, but actually because the US then becomes a market to be able to sell that stuff to that circumvents the EU and renders it a disadvantage for our consumers. I hope that made sense.
Okay, so it does make sense. I thank you, Cheryl Waitley, for sending that in the Discord.
Thanks, Daddy Jim, to Greg, by the way, and F Oink. We also
Senator Cruz, Senator Tuberville, co-sponsor, April the 30th. It's just coming out.
April the 30th. That's a long time ago. So he's actually been co-sponsoring that for some time. Interesting.
But here's what's interesting. Okay, so I don't understand. So is that how you guys are reading that? Because I don't go there, so I'm not an expert on this website. I did type it into Grok, and I did type it into ChatGPT, and both Grok and ChatGPT says that there is no direct evidence from the provided information that confirms Senator Tommy Tuberville is explicitly supporting Senator Graham's bill on sanctions on Russia, known as the Sanctioning Act of 2025. The bill introduced by Graham and Richard Blumenthal has garnered significant bipartisan support, with 72 senators reportedly backing it. So, I mean, I see that on Grok, but I do see what Cheryl sent me, and Tuberville's name's there, but it says April 30th. So, I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know.
We'll have to look into that.
Anybody has more links, please send them.
1 hour ago, we got 81 senators.
Then I don't want to say he's in there.
So that's interesting. That's from
are both
ABC
up to date
news.
They have problems recent fact. Okay, thank you, JR. So it could be. I mean, I'm got to go with the U.S. Congress site, the Congress.gov that Cheryl sent me. All right, Grok's not reliable. All right, we're going to go with the Congress.gov. And if Congress.gov is accurate, yes, Senator Tuberville has got on board.
Yeah, that's good. 81. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Just going to go back to thanking Mark. Basically, we read this one out earlier. Our favorite trio, or I put it up. Always great conversations. I mean, trio has become the duo now, and we've just distilled the greatness of Prof. Gerdes into both of us.
Gerdes he's right there standing with his sword raised. That's Gerdes.
Yeah, he's got
you got it right.
he's got quite the dress. As for Trump, cowards will always take the side of the bully over the side of those being bullied. It's easier, in my opinion. Trump is a coward. 100% agreement from me.
Completely
Mark
agree with
Biscuit.
that.
Mark Biscuit and Oliner are legends in this universe. They definitely are. Armored Hamster, awesome. For you, says rodents against tyrants and bullies. Stay strong. It's an evil marathon, and we've got a long way to go. Thanks, guys, for your daily updates. So, yeah,
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yep. So, what do we have? F oink again. Putin practices. Words are cheap. Trump buys it. Yes, he does.
Completely.
Absolutely. We have Goose Springsteen again. Thanks, Goose. What does the panel think? Now, it's a smaller panel, but you know, I don't. Anything I say is going to be insulting Prof. Gerdes, so I won't say that. We got the best of the. No. What does the panel think should be done with Iran? Most European nations would prefer coexistence via a deal with, So my opinion is that Trump I don't know too much though, so I could easily be wrong on this. But my sense was that you want to, and I interviewed an Iranian a guy I know I've interviewed him a couple of times on my actually once on this channel, once on my philosophical channel, and I think the movement to just kind of, if you push someone away like that, it's difficult. Like we had this try and get Putin in amongst us. This is a Merkel's approach to changing Putin and Russia, is do trade, get them into your inner circle, and then they will change. But actually, Putin didn't do that. But I think that was an admirable approach. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. When it works, it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. Right? With Iran, I think the more you push Iran away, there is a distinct possibility that you're pushing them into the arms of all these other nefarious entities around the world. Then they do deals, and then they end up with nukes anyway. So I think Obama's approach was what I would prefer to the Trumpian approach. As it was, I'm not quite sure what Trump is doing at the moment, because he seems to have flip-flopped on Iran and now wants to be doing deals with them. So anyway, most European nations would prefer coexistence via a deal like Obama got. That's kind of probably where I am, but I don't know enough. Trump has actually shown restraint lately. Yeah, it's interesting. But Israel, US hawks favor military action. The issue with all of this at the moment is that Israel is becoming a growing pariah state. So you have had, like today and yesterday, people coming out. There was a massive to-do in the House of Commons where David Lammy for the Labour government had a go at Priti Patel for the Conservatives over Israel, saying, how can you not say what's going on in Israel is not disgusting and all this kind of stuff. So Europe is moving away. You've had the Spanish president Sanchez today come out and say, if we've kicked Russia out of Eurovision, I know Eurovision's kind of not that important, but it's kind of representative. If we kicked Russia out of Eurovision, how can we have not kicked out Israel? We need to kick Israel out. So this is interesting because you're starting to get a movement in American political circles of people actually getting fed up with Israel, including in the Trump administration as well. And so it's a whole hot mess, Israel, right now.
Well, I can tell you, I can confirm for you, because I follow a lot of Israelis and I have good friends there in IDF. I can tell you that there is definitely a breakdown in the relationship between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. I can tell you that Israel right now is just unfettered in their assault. And I can also tell you that unless something changes,
there's genocide.
I'm not prognosticating. Oh, for sure. If we're going to call Ukraine genocide, then you have to call Gaza genocide. And you guys know my background. So it's a fact. I can't stand just indiscriminately leveling that place. Is unacceptable. I can't stand on the mountaintop and scream about Ukraine and be silent about Gaza.
But it's also humanitarian aid, so they're stopping humanitarian aid.
Then don't listen to me if I was to say that anybody out there that's screaming about one of but not the other, then you've got an issue. Now there are other issues that go into it, okay, and you can talk about October 7th, you can whatever, but take all that aside. Unless something changes, Israel will strike Iran's nuclear facilities within 14 days.
I think you're right. And I don't know too
unless
much about
something
this,
changes.
That's my.
They're going to smoke it.
Yeah, And then the US will be in a difficult position of whether they condone that or not.
Well,
And they're also trying to appease Iran to a degree. Like, not quite sure what Trump's doing with Iran. He seems to be a little bit all over the place. But anyway,
he's scared. Listen, he's a coward, man. He went and saluted the stinking generals in I don't care what country it is. I'm not downing that country. You know, that's not protocol. And if Joseph Biden had went to UAE and saluted their general, the MAGA would have lost their ever-loving mind. You don't salute the general of another nation. You're the president of the United States, okay? But he can do it, and it's okay. And listen, I'm just telling you the truth. You can
double
go there, and it's
amazing.
a double standard. It's ridiculous. So it's gonna be. We've got a couple of really cool, not cool, really interesting things to watch. A is the bill we're talking about. If this thing keeps rolling and that was pushed through, what's going to be the Trump response?
Huge.
And if Israel pops a few missiles down on Iranian nuclear sites, what's Trump going to do? I mean, listen, man, I am a red, white, and blue. I'm a Navy grandpa brat. I love my U.S. Navy, but right now we can't even keep our planes on our ships. I mean, so...
Yeah.
My grandfather is rolling in his grave that planes are dropping off of our aircraft carriers. I promise you. It's unbelievable, but
crazy times. It's all right, because Justin Adams says, keep up the good work, Greg. You're very valuable. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Justin.
Dunk on you, working but listening. In a meeting, Slava Ukraini, you are, as long as you're listening to us and not the meeting, then you're okay, Duncan. If you listen to the meeting, screw you. You haven't got your priorities right. It should be us before work.
Tactical submarines. That was funny. Thank you, Dunk, and thank you for listening in today.
Does give you an awful lot of Greg Terry memberships, as does Adrian. 50 memberships. Wow.
That's the Swiss legend. He's also been a big supporter of Rick Ukrainian.
And Stephen Bendel from Norway, thanks, matey. Absolutely love you, man. As the US has sidelined itself, Europe must rise to the occasion and take the lead. Europe's population size and combined economy show that it could lead the free world. Yeah, there's an interesting decision for Europe as to the direction of Europe going forward in the world. So if the US really is damaging their position in the world and is receding from global leadership, then if you're talking about who's going to stand up for the ideals of democracy and freedom and transparency, then the EU, Europe as a whole, including UK and Norway, and Switzerland, we are left having to, pick up, take the baton and run with it. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting time globally right now. Goose, only JP will get this, but Trump's amoral transactional nature has for now put him on the same side as Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, who did quite a favorable interview with the new leader. I presume you're talking about the new leader of Syria there, and they did do it. Okay, what are you talking about? Trump did this photo op next to the leader of Syria, which was, as Greg said earlier, you can understand the politics of that, and I do. And actually, I think it's kind of a good thing, but the way he talked about him in terms of being good looking and strong and all this stuff, you don't say that about someone that only a year ago you had a $10 million reward on their head because they were a member of Al Qaeda, right? So yes, he is now the leader of Syria, and hopefully that leopard has changed its spots, and he's going to lead Syria into a positive version of what it can be going forward. Yes, and so therefore you deal with him diplomatically, not fawningly, like some kind of lovesick puppy that loves these strong men. So Trump's dealing with him, I think, was poor form, but I do understand that you do need to have a kind of pragmatic, realist approach sometimes when it comes to dealing with people that you otherwise wouldn't have liked. But yeah, anyway, thanks,
well said.
Really appreciate that. So we have Rick from the Netherlands. This is for you, Greg, and he can get to Transnistria, Moldova. I don't know what that's in relationship to.
I was watching the chat earlier, Rick, and they were talking about, well, I don't know if it was Rick, but there was conversation in the chat going on about Romania making some action against the Transnistria, or that's probably in reference to when I was on the map talking about Odessa. and that would then have the direct link to Transnistria. Yes.
And Rick, for my own channel, thank you, Rick. Really appreciate that, matey. Super cool to have you back on board. Well, I've seen a little bit of you recently, but
yes,
yeah. Oink. Common sense is a superpower nowadays. I hope so. But thanks thank you to me. Actually, thank you, Oink. That was for me, so I really appreciate that, matey. Over from Hungary. We'll be speaking more and more about Hungary going forward, because the presidential, or the elections are in. He's prime minister. The general elections are in 2026, and they are tightening the laws around campaign fundraising, or like they're doing a foreign agents law, a 2.0 of the foreign agents law. I think they already have in Hungary at the moment. They're trying to stop opposition being able to generate funding and the ability to challenge Fidesz in Hungary. So Hungary is going to be an absolutely fascinating watch for the next year. Camilla Matson says, and this is for you, Greg, I saw today that Ukraine, I'm not sure about this, want to use electronic MC. I don't know what that means.
I think that was back when we were talking about the motorcycles. I was trying to
oh, right. Electric
yes.
motorcycles. Yep.
Electric motorbikes.
Point for you. Russia is using motorcycles strategically to attract Ukraine's FPV drones. Well, yeah, that's quite some way to attract them, isn't it? Like humans on a motorbike. Yeah, my job is to die to take out a drone. But yeah, that's effectively what's happening.
And I can confirm for you that Ukraine is already using electronic little scooters.
Electrics, yeah, motorbikes and whatnot. In fact, they got given some by Germany some time back as one of the or a couple of advanced packages, because the advantage of using electric motorbikes, I'm talking about motorbikes, not e-scooters, is that they're really quiet. So actually special forces, they've developed them for special forces to use to get in quietly at night and whatnot. YouTube user for you says, are either Putin or Trump receiving accurate intelligence? That is a absolutely diamond.
It's a fantastic question. I will tell you this.
I don't think so.
Well, let's analyze it. Donald Trump, the intelligence he has is he's seen videos and pictures of body parts laying everywhere and drones blowing up trees, and that's what he has stated multiple times, and 5,000 being killed every week. So that's the intelligence we know that he's seen. So he's, which
he's taken 14 intelligence briefings in over 100 days. So he is essentially somewhere near once a week. Let's say once a week he takes an intelligence briefing. Now I think Obama would take, I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was probably half the day. I think it was something like half the days.
Well, I got news for you. If I was the president of the United States of America right now, and the world was in this type of hot mess, I would be getting intelligence reports every 8 hours on my desk or whatever. I mean, I would want to know. But anyway, but now what can we say about Vladimir Putin? Vladimir Putin is told and informed by his generals what they want him to hear. The only thing I can say about Vladimir Putin is today, 100%, he was in the Kursk region last night. He was touring the Kursk nuclear power plant. Honestly, which is it could have been hit, to be quite honest with you. It's no problem. Ukraine could have hit it easily, in my opinion. So what we can say for Putin is, he gets at least to Kursk. But what he's told, I'm sure, is what they want him to hear.
And there's this element of Branyo, which is, I know what I'm telling you is BS. You know it's BS. You know that I know it's BS, and I know that you know that I know that you know it's BS, and so on and so forth. And so that you do this merry dance. But at some point, there's a breakdown between that where it gets to someone that actually believes it, right? So you're sending BS up the hierarchy, and then at some point they're like, oh, this is actually happening. And and that, I think, goes some way to explaining why Russia invaded in the first place and thought they were going to be welcomed with open arms and flowers, bunches of flowers. But they were met with people who are like, what the hell are you doing invading our sovereign nation? Screw you. And so there was a breakdown in that. But I think, I think generally Putin, I'm not wholly sure he's getting fully accurate information. I don't think he knows what's going on the front line.
Well,
like, as accurately
he's getting
as
that information. He's there, but I will tell you this: he's hearing the air alarms go off in Moscow.
Mm.
You know, so there's just little things.
Yeah. Daddy Jim, best mods on the internet, hands down.
100%.
Excellent. Thank you for your help for Greg there. And we have now Rick from the Netherlands. When are we going to see 1980s Flash Gordon like battle? We are technologically close, right? Yeah, it is. But funny enough, like I keep referencing like Terminator, where we are seeing, you know, autonomous drones starting to be used. We are seeing all sorts of developments with unmanned surface vehicles, unmanned area vehicles, unmanned ground vehicles. We're seeing torpedoes that have some kind of ability to stay underwater for ages and then do their thing. You know, there's talk about that. All sorts of things that was science fiction becoming science fact. So yeah, who knows?
Well,
you know.
Ukraine themselves putting out about 48 hours ago that Russia has upgraded again their Shaheeds, and this is confirmed. I know you know about it, Johnny. They go faster. They carry up to 90 kilograms of a warhead. They
Lower,
also
higher, faster, dive
they
quicker,
go
bigger
faster, higher,
warheads,
dive quicker. They also are
better
now
ships.
can be completely autonomous, meaning running off of artificial intelligence, which means they don't strike a particular target. They'll just find a target, and it can be a bus with people in it going to pick potatoes, like happened in Kharkiv region a couple of days ago. The blue bus.
That was an evacuation bus. Yeah.
Or it can be a military target, or it could be anything. It's going to lock onto something. So it's changing very rapidly. And I'll also tell you what else is changing rapidly. It's also the healing up soldiers, the rehabilitation of soldiers. One of the guys I work with closely down on the southern front, he's a commander in the 28th. I never showed it online because just didn't want to, but he actually has a fake arm. And so he took damage in a battle about 18 months ago, and his arm was basically destroyed from here down, from the elbow down. And they literally put in titanium bones, and then he has this plastic case that goes over his bones, so it's like a cyborg, man, and it's bad to the bone. Yes, I mean everything
to the bone.
Oh, dude, he's a stud. He's a stud.
So I guess we'll have to answer some of these questions fairly quickly. Over what period, Suzanne Melendi, thank you. Over what period of time was the Russian Orthodox Church transitioned into from clerics to the KGB? My understanding, I'm no great knowledge on this, but it's long been the case that the Russian Orthodox Church has been very much involved with the KGB. So it's not something that's transitioned like recently. If you go, there's actually a really good Wikipedia page. I wrote an article on
saying,
and yeah, they've long been involved heavily with the KGB. So that's not a new phenomenon. But thank you for that. Daryl Thomas, thank you for your super sticker. Always great to have your support. Really appreciate that, mate. And Goose, and you know, stop having better hair than me. That's why I'm wearing a cap. Goose Springsteen, JP, on the topic of reform, so that's the UK political party, they are a blunt instrument to scare Labour and the Conservatives to go hard on immigration. Starmer would never have made the Island of Strangers speech without reform. You are absolutely right, 100% Goose. So just those who don't know, Keir Starmer made a very un-Labour-like speech that was very anti-immigration recently in terms of the rhetoric. He's calling us an island of strangers, i.e. we're full of immigrants that don't really know each other, don't really get on, that kind of thing. And he would never have said that if he wasn't feeling the heat from reform on immigration. So immigration is going to be like a key, and I think it is for everywhere in the world, actually, as things like climate change and wars and all sorts of things are going to force people to move to places that will better suit them and their family and the ability to make a living. And temperate regions of the world like Europe and the UK and the US will receive an awful lot of people wanting to go to places that are easier to live than where they live. And so, you know, immigration is going to be a perennial problem. So yeah, you know, Labour are going to have to deal with that. Do they shift to the right, or do they keep humane and compassionate whilst tightening up immigration? Who knows what's going to happen there? But thank you for that, mate. Excellent chat, says Drychar. Thank you for this. As always, deal JP and chums. This will probably go towards white port. Can't fault that. Do you know what? I'm drinking some Pinot Noir. I'm going to look like an alcoholic, Craig. This is a really nice bottle of Pinot Noir that I bought. But I have the white port he's talking about just to the side here. Just looking at me. It's been looking at me for about 3 days. White port is lovely, and that bottle comes from Mark. By the way, Mark from the little whiskey shop,
whom I know personally. Yes,
he has just started getting in Ukrainian wines, and he sent me a picture of all the Ukrainian wines he's got in today, and I've just bought a bunch of them, and I'm really super excited to support Ukraine through drinking. So anyway,
I'm so proud of you, JP. You are an expert.
The things I do for Ukraine: drink more wine, mainly. Okay, this is for you, F-Oink, giving you 10,000 Hungarian florins, which is super cool. Ukraine needs help. Donate generously.
Yes. I can't wait to get back there very soon.
That's super kind, F-Oink. And the Weasel with a super sticker. Thank you very much, Weasel. Della, for you. Adelia,
thank you, Della.
Sorry for you, Adelia. Adelia. My eyes are old and worn.
She's conductor on the Hope Train.
Greg Papinko, this was great. Thanks, JP, Greg, Terry, and Prof. It's still going. Sadly enough, for most
thank
humans,
you, Greg. Yeah,
we are still going. But we're almost down at the end of these. Michael Vuchar, Greg Terry, contact me. I will help you understand China.
Thank you, Michael.
So that's Michael.
I'm going to be talking more about China, so I'm going to get your expertise, sir. Thank you.
And Pyro Kurt Brubaker says, amazing stream. The mods for Jonathan are just as awesome as the mods on the Hope Train. Thank you for as Trump would say, equalizing. Do you know this word, equalizing? It's like groceries. Have you heard groceries? It's this old-fashioned term that no one uses anymore. But I'll let you know what groceries mean. Anyway, they are.
Oh, and gas is $1.98 a gallon too, buddy.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, the groceries are down. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Who knew? No, thanks, Pyro. That's amazing. Really appreciate that. And Blonde Bombshell, a huge shout out to the amazing supporters in the chat. Haji, 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you, awesome ledge. And Blonde Bombsheller being amazing for you, 20 Greg Terry memberships.
Hey, and I need to give a shout out to Blonde Bombsheller. Her son is graduating from school tomorrow, and he will be heading to the Naval for boot camp for the U.S. Navy. He'll be going into the nuclear field and all this. So
wow,
big shout out to Alex graduating.
Steve Sane, for you, thank you all as always, Pastor Greg and Zhenya, for all you continue to do for the people.
Very welcome, Australian brother.
Absolutely. And Tuma, 5 ATP Greg Terry Experience memberships. Now we have, thank you, Tuma. Seb says, and Seb S726, is it possible Trump is a sleeper agent with trigger words activating him, parroting anything that follows a key phrase in calls with Putin, etc.? He flips entirely on his last conversation. My answer to that is Trump has a recency bias. And because I've explained this many times before, sorry to repeat myself to my audience, but Trump doesn't read, right? So he doesn't read books. He doesn't take intelligence briefings. So the question is, where does he get his information on anything from? He is going into really complex geopolitical situations, not knowing a thing about anywhere. But he's not held to account by Fox News. It's embarrassing because if Joe Biden had said things like about the Pakistan-India conflict that's going on, that this is a thing that's been going on for thousands of years, when Pakistan didn't exist until 1947, and this is actually a very recent thing. Yeah, there are issues all around the world all the time that have been between all peoples around the world, but the particularities of the Pakistan-India situation are very recent and very complex, and not at all what you understand them to be, Donald Trump, because you don't understand anything, because you don't read, you don't take intelligence briefings, and your information comes from whoever spoke to you last. And what happens is he has a recency bias. So he speaks to Zelensky in the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica of Vatican, and he comes away saying really pro-Ukrainian things, because he doesn't have those people around him like Stephen Miller and all these aides around him that are poisoning him with horrible views. But he goes back to the White House and those people around him, and that's what he regurgitates. He's on the phone to Putin. He regurgitates what Putin says. He then goes back to the White House, speaks to his aides. He regurgitates what they say. He doesn't have a core ideology, as Prof. Gerdes says, as I've said forever and a day. He is ideologically vacuous. He is an empty shell that gets filled with whoever spoke to him last. He has some core ideas, very vague ideas about like tariffs and like immigration, but generally he's empty and filled with the thoughts of the last person.
But he will let you know that he passed his physical with flying colors, and on the cognitive, off the charts.
Remember, an elephant, a parrot, and a badger, or whatever it is. Who knows? Ryan Howe, thank you on behalf of Greg. Greg, you do great work. Share the videos I see on my socials,
Thank you,
and
Ryan.
try to boost you on Blue Sky. As for Israel, Middle Eastern wars are generally morally convoluted. True. While Ukraine is the most black and white war currently, I think that's
100% agree.
Broadly true. Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Ryan.
The Israel situation is becoming more black and white. Sadly, I just think, you know,
it is. But when you try to compare the spider web of connections just by sheer breakdown in the Middle East, and you just compare that to basically pure evil dictator Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine. I mean,
I've long said it's the most exactly right. It's the most black and white conflict, I think, in modern history. F Oink Greg for president.
Let's go, F Oink. You would be
to be honest, he's got a fight on his hands, because I'm going to get the constitution change or whatever it is that means that people not born in the US can't. Have you seen my birth certificate, Greg? Have you?
No,
seen
sir.
It? Yeah, I was born in Hawaii. Anyway, so
I thought you were born in Kenya.
No, Hawaii. Definitely. Oh,
okay. Well, listen, you're the one.
Don't you birth me. Don't you birth me. Like, so anyway,
let me tell you something. I will make you my running mate, and we can have F Oink as the ambassador of Hungary to the United States.
If you're a little bit nicer to me, you can be my vice president. Just a little bit nicer. Okay. So moving on from that weirdness.
Let me ask you something.
Perry.
How much of the wine have you drank?
Too much.
Okay.
I'm starting to slur my words. And before I came on, because my partner was years old this last weekend, right? And we had a big party and got a function room, and everyone gave her just gin, prosecco, some champagne as well. We have got more bottles of booze in this house than you could poke a hairy stick at. So we opened a bottle of prosecco earlier because, you know, it's Wednesday, and so I had a couple of glasses of prosecco and then started on red wine. So I should not be doing this. I definitely shouldn't be doing this. Julie Perry, thank you very much on behalf of me. That's really kind. Thanks. Great trio. Now to a duo. We have evaporated one.
In regards to stoners on immigration, it should be noted that plenty of left-leaning people are fairly anti-immigration, like Bernie Sanders did state open borders are a Koch scheme for cheap labor.
Yeah, so the challenge for those sitting on the left is to be robust on immigration, but like I said earlier, with compassion and humanity. So you can be about rules-based orders where immigration is part of that rules-based order, but as long as you do it with humanity and compassion, then you can be strict still. And so that's what I think that the left need to deal with, not like rounding people up off the streets when you're wearing balaclavas and not having ID and putting them in vehicles and sending them to El Salvador or South Sudan. We hear, goodness me, like one of the worst countries on earth, you're sending people that you've rounded up off the streets to South Sudan. It's just insanity. So there needs to be a grip on immigration, but with humanity and compassion. But yeah, thank you for that, Ryan. So Kiwi John, thank you guys. Great stream for the truth, Slava Ukraine.
And I've met a lot of Kiwis there fighting and helping in Ukraine. Great New Zealanders. And early before when the stream was getting started, Garnet Zone became a crew member. Thank you, Garnet. And F Oink gifted 50 memberships tonight before we got right when we got started. So thank you, F Oink. And he is now going to be the Hungarian ambassador to the United States.
With under you as vice president, right? Kiwi John, I won't like hit you with my Kiwi accent, which all my audience know is on point, chef's kiss. My Kiwi accent, my Aussie accent, absolutely superb. Anyway, I'm wearing my greenstone as I have done for every day of my life since the year 2000. There's my Kiwi greenstone, Kia kaha, bro. And yeah, so thank you, Kiwi John and Rick. This is our last one. So thank you. And Trump has a concentration span of 13 minutes max, which is more than I can say, which is less than I can say for you guys who have been going with us for 2 hours, 18 minutes. So that's quite a miracle. Anyway,
thank you guys. And I'll tell you.
Can I just show you this as well from what I was looking at earlier? And I'll get rid of that. Thank you, Rick. 26 MEPs have urged the European Commission to halt funding to Hungary over rule of law violations. So that's not a lot of MEPs in the grand scheme of European Parliament, which has hundreds, you know, what is it, 700 odd or something. We call on the Commission to increase pressure on Orban's government to stop violating EU values and laws, they wrote in a budget commissioner to the budget commissioner. So, you know, Hungary is a bit of a persona non grata for some in Europe. Of course, there are factions in the European Parliament who are aligned to Hungary, though, as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that one in there. What were you going to say, my good man?
No, I was just going to say I was checking the air alarm. There are drones flying over 3 regions of Ukraine right now, and Ukraine has a lot of drones in the air over Russia right now. And then Russia just officially introduced their new ground general. And other than that, we're caught up.
Yep. So that's where the Ukrainian drones supposedly are at the moment, flying over Russia. And yeah, the Russian rear is under massive drone attack. 77 have already been intercepted in just 3.5 hours. Drones are trying to break through to the capital. The Moscow region is also under attack. Windows in houses are shaking, according to Russian media. So yeah, big drone attack on Moscow, which has been ongoing all day. They've had the
all day,
and the, you know, in broad daylight that's been taking place, which I think is you know, not something we normally see, but it has happened previously. So I would like to say thank you to all the people in the live chat. Thank you very much for
thank you, everybody,
for this long amount of time. Greg, what are your, I guess, closing thoughts for this?
Closing thoughts are just thank you, because if it wasn't for the people, and we're growing. I'm seeing people putting in the chat. Dylan Burns and JP Lindsley are debating right now, so go check that out. It probably is on Dylan's channel. And I know Dylan is in Ukraine. Yeah, that'll be interesting and definitely worth a watch. So I want to give a shout out there. But other than that, I just want to always be grateful to the community and thank you so much. All we're trying to do is help and share truth. And it doesn't mean we know all the truth. We just try to hunt for it together. And thank you for joining us on this journey. And it's so appreciated.
Dave I'm a sucker Evans. For someone just asking for it, but Dave Evans, Jonathan, give me a shout out, please. Love you, man. Dave
all right,
Evans,
I'm gonna give. All right, he asked for it. He asked for it. He's gonna get this shout out.
Welcome to Ukraine.
So you asked for it. You know,
you get it.
Ask and you shall receive, Johnny. Can I get an amen, brother?
Yeah. Anyway, so my
how much wine have you drunk? Drink?
Not enough to amen, my friend.
Oh.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother.
Amen. Oh, there you go.
Makes me happy. Yeah, so yeah, thank you as ever to the wonderful communities that we have built up here. It's absolutely wonderful. I hope that Tuma is right in saying I believe that the US will do the right thing in the end. You know, if it was down to the people of the US, I think broadly, if they had the right information, they would do the right thing. The problem is there's so much disinformation flying around. And at the heart of that is the Trump administration that I think is hell-bent on not doing the right thing at the moment. But possibly if the Senate can... part of the issue at the moment is that Donald Trump has tried to rule by fear. He's had the record number of executive orders, which is a way of trying to get around enacting policies through Congress, which is the correct democratic process. So unfortunately, you know, we are seeing the US go down a more dictatorial, autocratic route where he's trying to do things unilaterally rather than democratically. And it would be great to see Lindsey Graham's bill, because Lindsey Graham, he flip-flops all over the place because I think he's beholden to Trump due to compromise. I've said this before, and he will toe the party line if he has to.
Well, I'm going to.
His heart is with Ukraine.
His heart may be with Ukraine, but he stabbed Vladimir Zelensky in the back.
Yeah,
Like
I didn't like that. I know what you're talking about.
He stabbed him in the back.
After the Oval Office.
That's a fact. He
right.
stabbed him in the back. Now,
Awesome.
what he's doing now, thank you, but that's what we're seeing. Nothing but, you called it flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. But you let Israel strike Iran, and the Senate and House push through sanctions, we're gonna see the true colors, even more of what's going to unfold from the Trump administration. And right now, the colors we have seen are not good.
Interesting.
So we'll see. I can tell you right now, traveling all over this country, I've never seen a Russian flag waving in somebody's yard. I've never seen a bumper sticker that says honk if you've loved Putin, but I see yellow and blue everywhere, flags waving, bumper stickers, business signs, even to this day, pushing 4 years in the fourth year of war. I'm telling you, American people stand with Ukraine, and we've just got to, I don't know how to, I don't want to use the word cancer because that would be very disrespectful right now with President Joe Biden's diagnosis, but we've got really we drained the swamp, and as they call it, and the swamp got dirtier. I think we drained the swamp and found the cesspool.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's just where we're at. So,
well, look, Greg, it's been a pleasure. I thank you for humoring me for 2.5 hours. Thank you.
No, this was fantastic. We're caught up.
Yeah, we are caught up. So much as ever to talk about. Hopefully, we have helped you, wade through the geopolitical swamp that surrounds this war in Ukraine. And we shall, I'm sure, hook up again to speak to you in a week or so.
Oh, yes.
As it's always a pleasure, never a chore. Thank you very much. And let's just do a final, I guess, Slava Ukraini, my good friend.
Geruim Slava, razum do permoga. Thank you, guys. We appreciate all of you so much. And especially the mods. I know, it's a lot of work, and grateful for you guys immensely on both channels. It's just
give
fantastic.
us your soundboard, Slava Ukraini.
You want that one? I can give it to you.
Yeah. I do.
Slava Ukraini.
Nice. And dunk on you for a final one there. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. Really appreciate it. All the very best.